Would you be the jerk for sticking up for someone who said they didn't know it was wrong to wear white to a wedding? We'll get to that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for not adding a third bathroom to our house? My husband, our daughters, 18, 16, 16, and 12, and I live in a 4-bed, 2-bath house. All of the girls share a bathroom, and they've been complaining about it for a while. We've been saying we'll convert the laundry room into a bathroom for the twins for a while. It's an expensive project, so we've never gotten to it. My husband and I started working on our garage recently and turned it into a gym for him, a new laundry room, and an office for me. Then we came into some money and decided to renovate both bathrooms, remodel the kitchen, and do work on the backyard. The girls were pissed when we told them about the work we were doing on the house. They were saying it's not fair that my husband gets a gym when the twins share a room, and that we chose to work on the backyard instead of adding the third bathroom. They've been calling us selfish and even got our parents and siblings to give us a hard time for not giving the girls another bathroom or giving the twins their own rooms. They don't understand that now that the laundry room is done, we have the space for the bathroom. The bathroom's next on our list. I wanted to get some outside opinions on this, since our kids and our families have been giving us a hard time. I think they are the jerks in this situation, only because as far as matter of importance goes, the third bathroom probably trumped any of those other 4 or 5 projects that they did before that. Seemed like they were doing things they wanted to do rather than help their kids out. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not a bunch of people are jerks or not, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for expecting my mom to help with babysitting? I, 23-year-old male, have a son, 5 months old, with my current girlfriend, 19-year-old female. I moved back in with my mom 6 months ago due to not being able to keep up with payments on my apartment. My mom's allowing us to stay in the extra room. I work full-time and I make $20 an hour, but between me providing for my son and my girlfriend not working, I've been needing the extra help. And since my mom lives here and we're all in the same household, I sometimes ask her for help with babysitting. This isn't often. I feel that since we're family and live together, I should be able to get some help with him. It's my first child and it's extremely overwhelming. I didn't know how hard this was going to be. My mom refused, saying that I'm using her for babysitting too much, saying that my girlfriend and I are becoming a burden to her, and she expressed that since I was living for her, that it's becoming frustrating that I haven't been able to pay the back rent that she keeps asking me for. And she told me that she's behind 2 checks because her job messed up her pay when she first started. I told her that I understand, but I reminded her that I pay for gas on her car that I use, and that I go half on car insurance with her since we share her car. My mom said that she feels I'm taking advantage of her because she feels I can't manage my money correctly, ask to borrow too much, and ask for babysitting. But I told her I don't feel like I asked for much, and I told her I didn't understand why she wouldn't make time to help babysit her grandson when it's clear we're struggling. Am I the jerk? I mean, I get being inexperienced and all and wanting some pointers and tips, but if your girlfriend isn't working, what are they doing that requires your mom to be there babysitting your kid? If you're a stay-at-home mom and you're not working, you have all day to take care of your kid properly. What do you need your mom over all the time for? Even if both OP and their girlfriend were working, that still doesn't mean that the grandma has to come over and babysit the baby all the time. Our next story is, am I the jerk for how I reacted when I found out that my husband uninstalled my office lock? Ever since I started working from home, my husband started treating it as if I'm not really working. He believes work from home isn't as much of a real job as leaving the house and driving to your workplace. He would interrupt me at all times, send the kids in so I could help them get things done. He even goes in randomly and asks me to do things under the guise of, "Just a minute, you won't get fired over a minute break." I've grown tired of the constant barging. So what I did was purchase a lock and lock the office to no longer give him access to interrupt me. He found out and uninstalled it while I was. He said that it's his house and that I cannot lock him out of any room in it. I was floored once I saw that he threw the lock away. I went off at him, just screaming my head off, telling him that he was jeopardizing my livelihood, and his body language and tone changed. He started ranting about how I'm being cruel for accusing him of such things and selfish for even entertaining the idea of keeping him and the kids out and ignoring them like that. He stormed off and left and had his mother lecture me about how I'm being unfair, prioritizing work over family and stuff like that. Lastly, she talked about yelling at my husband and trying to intimidate and control him. He's been quiet since then. Am I the jerk for my reaction? I think OP's not the jerk, and it's something that I still struggle with to this day with work from home work. I think for some people, it's really hard to get into the mindset of, despite being at home, you are working and you are on the clock and you need to focus on that work. I mean, what this really boils down to is the husband can't respect you and your job enough. Like, does it have to get to the point where OP needs to take a laptop to a coffee store just so they can focus on their work for the day? I feel like this is the kind of stuff that would really chip away at a marriage. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not wanting to get a new tree topper? I'm a black mother of two 12-year-old twins, and I remarried my husband in the summer, so it's our first Christmas together. It's important that my husband and his son are Caucasian. Anyway, I was putting up our Christmas tree and decorations because it's time. And it's the last Sunday before the kids get swamped with finals, and we like to do it together. I asked my husband and stepson if they'd like to join, and they said yes. Now, as we're putting stuff up, my husband starts making commentary on how everything is black. I have little black nutcracker ornaments and statues, and we have a little Christmas village full of black people. I shrugged it off, and we kept going until it was time to bring out the angel tree topper. It was a black angel, and my husband stopped me and pulled me to the kitchen. He said we couldn't have all these black decorations when we were now a mixed family, and that we had to go and get some regular nutcrackers and people for the village as well as a regular tree topper. This is where I might come off cold, but I said no. No discussion, just no. I told him that if we ever left this house, him and his kids would get to see regular decorations and tree toppers and Santa and all that stuff outside. But my kids wouldn't get the same. And the least they deserved was to walk into their house and see decorations that looked like them. Plus, it took me a really long time to find all of my decorations, and I was going to give them to my kids when they moved out. So no. He said I was being selfish and unwelcoming, and that it wasn't fair to his son to have to leave the house to feel like he belonged. I told him it wasn't the same, and he asked me to explain how, but I wasn't in the mood to have such a heavy discussion. So I just shook my head and told him to read a book. I don't know, was I too harsh? Should I go get some non-black decorations? Will this really affect my stepson negatively? I don't want him to feel like he doesn't belong, but I don't think that's even possible. Am I the jerk? I don't think OP's the jerk because they're decorations. I literally cannot believe I have to say the sentence, but why does the skin color of Christmas decorations matter? I think what matters most when you're putting up Christmas ornaments is that the ornaments mean something to those people putting it up. Ornaments are supposed to make you smile, make you happy, have meaning to you. Well, these genuinely have meaning to OP, and honestly, I think it's really cool to see these ornaments because, like OP said, they had to work hard to find these ornaments. Our next story is, am I the jerk for calling my boyfriend sexist after he shared his opinion on one-night stands? For context, we're 22 and 23, and we've been together since high school. We went out last night with a big group of people we went to high school with, since everyone was home for break. It was his group of guy friends, some of our mutual friends, and one of my very close girlfriends, Claire. There was one guy there that I know, but that didn't go to school with us, and Claire really liked him. This guy's attractive, and I could tell he liked her back, so I tried to set them up. It worked, and they ended up leaving together. I told my boyfriend today I was happy for her, and he said, one-night stands are not an accomplishment for women. I asked him if he would be happy for his guy friends if they left the bar with a girl. He said, I guess, but I'd think the girl was easy. Those are direct quotes from our texts. I asked him how it's different, and he explained that most guys at bars are always trying to hook up, so the ball is in the girl's court. Therefore, if they do hook up, it's the girl who is easy, since she made the decision. I think it's one thing to judge casual sex, and another to place all of the blame on women. So I called him sexist and told him I was disgusted with him. He obviously was pissed at this because he believes that his logic makes perfect sense and that I'm the jerk. I think he also judges me for encouraging Claire to get with this guy, as if she's not a 22-year-old single woman living her best life. I don't know what to think or feel, honestly. I've been dating this guy for over 4 years and have never felt this unattracted to him. I'm just so confused, but as for calling him sexist, am I the jerk here? I agree with OP's sentiment here, where it's one thing to judge people who are perfectly fine with one-night stands and doing so at bars or a get-together where you meet the person for the genuine first time, but placing all of the blame on the woman for it? 100% OP's not the jerk, and I do think it's a sexist mindset. I also think their perspective is kind of gross because I feel like there's a subconscious, they're saying that and thinking that way because subconsciously they're thinking about how they'd feel about going and hooking up with that friend now. Our next story is, am I the jerk for getting residence permit in another country because my husband decided I should not be getting a visit visa to his country? I'm Ukrainian, my husband's American. We reside in a third country in the Middle East because of his work. It's very expensive to live here. I'm doing freelance work online and I live in a rental house under his name. And here there's many stupid rules where wives need no objection to even opening a bank account, etc. And I'm under his visa here. Because he's a USA citizen residing abroad, I'm not entitled for any immigration visa to the USA. I was about to have an interview to get a tourist visa to the USA so we can go there to see his family. We got into an argument because of something he did a day prior to my interview, and he took away supporting documents and said I don't deserve a visit to the USA. I didn't like that he used this as a power play of some sort, so I applied for a program to Canada that allows me to live and work there for 3 years. I got approved. I want to go ahead and go for it. Now my husband says I'm a jerk for doing it behind his back. Am I the jerk? 100,000,000% you are not the jerk and you should go and not look back. If you have an opportunity to get out of a country where they're trying to limit every possible thing you can do, go for it and do not look back. Canada is like entering a whole different universe compared to that. Our next story is, am I the jerk for leaving Thanksgiving dinner at my mother-in-law's house after I discovered that she threw out the dish I brought? I, 27-year-old female, am 5 months pregnant. I have pre-existing health issues that I manage by having a diet with no meat of any sort. This has caused me and mother-in-law to have conflicts, especially when I refuse to eat the food she makes. I used to either come and not eat anything, or just stay at home. Since I'm pregnant, I couldn't attend Thanksgiving and not bring food with me out of respect for mother-in-law. I cooked a small meal and brought it with me. Mother-in-law made a fuss about it, but justified it as, I was making a mistake robbing her grandbaby of getting all meat benefits. I explained that I take supplements as replacement, but she shrugged and was upset. We waited until the dinner table was set. Mother-in-law didn't let me help or go into the kitchen at all. She took my dish and said she'd reheat it for me and put it on the table. Yet, when I sat down, I was stunned to have discovered that she'd not put my dish there. When asked publicly, she denied receiving any dish from me and started asking if I'd accidentally left it at home or the car. There was a huge blow up. Mother-in-law tried to convince me to sit back down and just eat what she put on the table. I refused, but my husband insisted and told me to let it go this time. I decided to leave. I grabbed my stuff and walked out. I found out that she threw out the dish I brought and tried to get me to just eat what she put on her table. She said that she was looking out for grandbaby's health, and my husband said it wasn't worth leaving the celebration and causing a scene. We had a big argument, and his mom thinks I'm being dramatic and hard to deal with. Was I the jerk for walking out? The dish I brought was supposed to keep me full and provide me with all the benefits, so it wasn't like any of her appetizers or side dishes. I also put work into making it, and it cost me money. She keeps insisting it's about her grandbaby and her concern for their health. I think OP's definitely not the jerk. If you're going to a Thanksgiving dinner at somebody else's place and they're not willing to make anything on the side that supports your dietary restrictions, and you bring your own food to supplement that, they should respect that. It's an utter lack of respect for you and the health choices you've made for yourself. I also think they're grasping at straws, trying to use the baby as an excuse. This next story is, am I the jerk for introducing my boyfriend's parents as grandma and grandpa to my son? This last Thursday, I, 29-year-old female, went over to my boyfriend Jay's, 25-year-old male, house for Thanksgiving and brought my son, 4 years old, with me. I and Jay have been together for a year and a half now, and he's the most amazing man in the world. He's been amazing with my son. His bio father's not in his life, and I can genuinely see him as the one. Jay's parents came over as well. It's not that I don't get along with them, it's just I've only seen them ever 3 times before this Thanksgiving. I've not had any time to really bond with them, I guess. They had never met my son in person either, but they both knew about him. By the time I arrived, Jay's parents were already there and helping him finish up dinner. We greeted each other, and Jay's dad asked, "And who's this little guy?" I introduced them to my son and then introduced Jay's parents as Grandma and Grandpa to my precious boy. I didn't notice at the time, but all 3 of them became quiet almost immediately. I ended up waiting in the living room alone for almost half an hour before dinner, and things were just incredibly awkward for the rest of the night. My son did end up calling his parents by Grandma and Grandpa, and I quickly noticed both of them would be very disingenuous and awkward about it over dinner, but they didn't say anything to me about it. They didn't stick around for long after either, but when they both left, they were very cold to me. I asked Jay what their deal was, and he lost it at me. He claims I put him in an incredibly awkward position. His parents apparently didn't think we were that serious yet, and began to question him if I was only using him as a replacement daddy. He said that it was way out of line to introduce them that way without even talking to him beforehand. I think it's ridiculous. If one day he's going to be my son's stepdad, then why go through this formal nonsense? He claimed that's not the point, and we ended up fighting till I stormed out. We haven't talked since, and I've simply been waiting for an apology. I talked with my sister about it last night, and she said she was mortified to hear this, saying that she also didn't get the read that we were all that serious, and she never felt like Jay intended to take on a dad role. This has got me questioning if I was wrong. So I think OP is the jerk. I appreciate and I love OP's enthusiasm here, but you haven't talked to these people but 3 times. Introducing them to your kid as Grandma and Grandpa is both unfair to them and potentially harmful to your kid in the long run. I mean, you're playing chess here and you moved one of your pawns like 4 times in one move. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not wanting to call my daughter by her black name? My 36-year-old female daughter, 16-year-old female, was born at a complicated moment of my life. I'd left my parents' home in Vermont and ended up working as a maid in a hotel in Miami. I'm not ashamed, but it wasn't nice. It was there where I met a black man named Oscar. He wasn't rich or anything, but he offered me certain security and love. In a moment I was feeling really alone and hopeless. We moved in together and I got pregnant. Our baby was born and Oscar named her Taisha. I was okay with that name at the time. When she was only 3, Oscar was arrested for drug trafficking and sentenced to 15 years in prison. I decided to not let that destroy my life or my daughter's future. It was hard, but I got a new job as a waitress and did my best to raise my girl alone. Until I reconnected with my parents and they started to help us more. At first I felt bad for Oscar, but I came to realize that he only had himself to blame for how he ended up. Not only did he break the law, but he also could have put me and our daughter in danger. I stopped calling her by her birth name because it reminded me too much of Oscar, and I started calling her Taylor. I didn't legally change her name. I never had any contact with Oscar after he was arrested or told Taylor the truth about her father. I always wanted to tell her when she would be mature enough, and at some point I decided that moment would be 16. So when after her last birthday in February, I explained to her the whole story. She was shocked, of course. At first, she didn't do anything about it. But a few months later, she said that she wanted to talk to his father. She had researched about how to arrange a call with an inmate in Florida and decided to do it. I didn't like the idea at all, but didn't stop her. I don't know how the call actually went or what they did say to each other. Taylor didn't say much about it, and I didn't really want to know. She seemed to be happy about it. She said that she planned to talk to her father again at some point and send him a letter. A few days after the call, she told me that she would prefer for me and others to start calling her Taisha again. I thought that was very dumb because she didn't have any memory of being called that when she was a baby. Also, she had always known that that was her legal name, but never complained about being called Taylor. I ignored her and kept calling her Taylor. She didn't like that, and we've been arguing about this issue a lot. My father agrees with me, although he'd mostly avoid the conflict by just calling her darling as he usually does. But my mom thinks I should respect my daughter's preference regarding how she's named. My daughter's recently insinuated that me not wanting to call her by her real and black name is racist somehow, which I think it's beyond stupid. She had never cared about being black in her life. Race has never been an issue in our family. I can't avoid thinking all of this is because something Oscar said to her. Am I the jerk? I think OP is the jerk, not necessarily because of any race things, but for not respecting that they want to be called by their birth name. They've been given all of the news, they've gone through talking to their father, reconnecting with him. They decided they want to be called what they were legally named. I think you should respect that regardless of how you feel about that name. Our next story is, am I the jerk for turning on the washing machine before I leave for work? My girlfriend and I moved in together a few months ago. Everything's going well, but we seem to be hitting a wall when it comes to division of housework. She has some weekdays off due to her shift work, and I work 9 to 5. Before I go to work, I load the washing machine before I leave, and as she's home during the day, she hangs out with the washing. The other day, she confronted me abruptly when I was about to load the washer with our clothes and leave for work, and told me that I should wait until we're both home before turning it on, rather than putting it in and leaving it all for her to hang out. We argued over this. If I'm putting it in, it doesn't take too much to hang it out on her day off when she's home. She stopped me putting on the load and has been angry with me since. I just cannot understand why we must wait for both of us to have a day off for washing a load to be done, when the washing basket is clearly full. Am I the jerk? I think OP is the jerk because they're deciding how their partner is going to spend their time. And let's be real, if you're still hanging up your laundry, putting the laundry in the machine is a million times easier than hanging it up. It takes a while. It's not some casual 5-minute job to hang up all of your laundry. Plus, wrinkles are real, and if you put it in now and they don't get to it until a ways later, most of it will be wrinkled. Our next story is, am I the jerk for leaving festivities early after what my mother's boyfriend did to my laptop? I, 30-year-old male, visited my mother for Thanksgiving, and my plan was to stay until Monday. Little did I know that when my mother picked me up from the airport, my ex-stepfather, my mother was married to this man and divorced years ago and are now back together, was there in the car as a surprise from my mother. A little context for this man though, he made my life a living heck growing up and was very controlling of me and my brother. He wouldn't be supportive of anything my brother and I did and would gaslight us consistently. My mother's lonely where she lives now, and she really wanted someone to be with, which is why they amended and got back together, but didn't remarry. So Friday, I had to work on some crucial work-related things that came up out of nowhere, and I was on my laptop in my room finishing those things up. My mother called me to dinner, and I asked her to give me a few minutes because I needed to finish my train of thought with this email I was sending. My mother's boyfriend then opened the door and said it's time to eat now, and I asked him to give me a few minutes. He then proceeded to turn off my laptop, and I stopped him to the point where it just didn't shut down automatically, but it still shut down, and I lost my email I was typing up, along with some other work files that were still open. I was able to salvage a little bit of it. He and I got into a verbal altercation, and I said that he doesn't control me anymore, and that he's completely out of line for shutting down my laptop, to which he said that this is his and my mother's household and it's their rules. I got so irritated to the point where I said to the both of them that I would be changing my flight till later today, and that once I'm treated like the adult I am and not a teenager, I would come back for Christmas. So that's exactly what I did. I got a later flight, Ubered there, and left for home early. I've been doing some self-care things the past 2 days to take my mind off of what happened because my mother was so upset when I left early. But instead of thoroughly enjoying my time off, I was left with the surprise of my mother's boyfriend being there and still controlling me even 8 years after he and my mother divorced. I love my mother, but there is no way I'm putting up with behavior like that from her boyfriend, even if her boyfriend keeps her company and makes her happy. Am I the jerk? If he keeps her company and makes her happy, that's great, but that doesn't mean OP has to tolerate any of that behavior. OP's definitely not the jerk, and good for them for not getting steamrolled by this guy. This next story is, am I the jerk for asking my girlfriend to start making me breakfast every morning? I, 27-year-old male, have been living with my girlfriend, 29-year-old female, for several months now. For the most part, things are really good, and I plan to propose soon and hopefully have at least a couple of kids with her. However, we've run up against a conflict. She's an absolute morning person. I hate mornings. By the time I force myself out of bed in the morning and into the shower, she's already been up for at least 30 minutes, even though she has to be at work later than I do and is at the stove making breakfast. She likes a huge breakfast in the morning. She usually has eggs, either French toast or pancakes, hash browns or breakfast potatoes, and sausage or bacon. Sometimes on the weekends it's ham or steak. She eats almost nothing for lunch and usually has a smallish dinner, but she loves a huge breakfast. Meanwhile, I only ever have cold cereal for breakfast. Or maybe, if I'm feeling really ambitious, some instant oatmeal and orange juice. I only even start to come alive halfway through my second cup of coffee, and definitely don't feel like cooking in the morning. However, my girlfriend obviously does. So recently I asked her if she'd start making breakfast for me too. She asked if we were going to trade off, and if I would sometimes make breakfast for her too. I told her no, but reminded her that I do often make dinner for her. She said that since we trade off making dinner, we should trade off making breakfast too. I told her that there is no way I'll ever be able to muster that kind of energy first thing in the morning, but that since she obviously can, that she should just make me breakfast too. I said that it would take next to no extra effort on her part to throw in a couple more eggs, strips of bacon, an extra portion of hash browns, etc., since she's already doing it for herself anyway, but it started a fight, with her saying that it wasn't fair for me to expect her to think of me in the morning since I don't do the same for her. She seems to think that her making breakfast for me should figure into our division of labor and that I should do something extra in return. But I think that since she makes a huge breakfast for herself every morning anyway, that throwing in an extra portion of whatever she's making on for me would take next to no effort on her part. So why should I have to do more for her in return than I already do? Opie is really trying hard to avoid the sentence of, why should I have to do more for her when I ask her to do more for me? I mean, that's all you have to do, that's how you put it. Maybe try to make a deal where every time they make the breakfast for you, you make the dinner for them. That should work fine, right? And you can't hide behind the excuse of, I'm too tired in the morning. Or is it just too inconveniencing? That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for giving my mom and stepsister the benefit of the doubt that they didn't know it was rude to wear white to a wedding? I recently married my beautiful wife. This wedding was something she stressed about for a long time, as she's a major perfectionist and the type who's dreamed of her wedding her entire life. My mom flew in for the wedding. She lives abroad with her husband, and one of her stepdaughters came with her. My mom and I have an awkward relationship, and she was already a bit pissy that she had to come to the US for my wedding when I didn't even go to hers. I didn't feel safe in that country. I've never met her husband before or her stepdaughter. Everything was okay until the stepdaughter showed up at our wedding in sparkly white. I immediately saw my wife's face drop. I said maybe she didn't know, as women in her country wear red. My wife said that was no excuse, as my mom would have known. I said I wasn't sure if she would. She didn't spend that long in the US, and she hated it. She hardly interacted with anyone when she did live here, and moved the moment her divorce was final. I'm not really sure how much she picked up on American customs when she didn't interact. My wife asked me to kick my stepsister out, and I said I didn't feel comfortable as they'd had such a long flight and spent so much time and money. I assured her that everyone would know who the bride was, and I really don't think my mom or stepsister knew. As the wedding went on, I could see it was really affecting her ability to enjoy, and her friends kept bringing it up. I finally asked mutual family to ask them to leave, but my wife feels it was too little too late, and that I didn't defend her. She says as women, there's no way they didn't know, especially my mom, and that I chose to play dumb because I didn't want the confrontation. Her friends were all backing her, and I feel awful over this, and wish I just kicked them out the moment I saw them. Considering they were from a different country and their customs are completely different, it very well could be possible that they just didn't know. But considering they both wore white, it feels particularly targeted. I'm not sure exactly where they're from, but considering they wear red, is the custom over there for the guests often to wear white? Is it fair to expect that they don't do any research on the customs for American weddings before coming over? I don't know, but it's hard for me to outright say OP is the jerk. You're basing off of the assumption that they had to have known. Depending on how much they lived in that other country's culture, they might not have, I don't know. Am I the jerk for resenting my parents for not giving me my own bedroom growing up? My parents are upper middle class Americans. They settled down in a nice neighborhood on the outskirts of a city. They specifically chose the apartment they purchased because it had a really nice view. The apartment was a one-bedroom space. They converted the dining room to be my bedroom. It had a see-through sliding door that connected to the kitchen. It was about a fifth of the size of their bedroom, and it didn't have a closet. Recently we were talking, and I told them that it was clear that they valued a view over my privacy. They got offended and said that I was being ungrateful. If they were unable to provide me with my own bedroom, I wouldn't be resentful. I'm upset because they made an active choice to have a nice view instead of giving me a bedroom. Our building was one of the most expensive in the area. They could have easily moved to a cheaper apartment with 2 bedrooms. They say that I grew up privileged and shouldn't complain since the other had it much worse. Am I the jerk and an ungrateful child? If it's abundantly clear that they chose a more expensive place just because they liked waking up there and looking out the window more, then I don't think OP's the jerk. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not these people are just total jerks, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my coworker not to bring her child? I and my coworkers, mostly late 20s and early 30s, all without children, decided to have an early Christmas party just for our department next week. We planned to go to a pub around 7 p.m., get some beers and so on. We made a group chat and started to discuss where to go and what time. The regular. One of our coworkers is friends with a coworker on maternity leave, so they added her to the chat too. She was happy to come and told us that she'll attend with her son, who's currently 5 months. I told her that I don't think it's a good idea to take him with her, since we really are probably going to be loud and drinking, and he's going to be crying and it's also kind of late. She told me it's fine and that she's taking him everywhere with her. She even took him to her husband's conference where he has a presentation and he didn't cry much. Others joined me and said that it's not the best environment for a child, and that if she doesn't have a babysitter, we can change to a more suitable day. But she said she doesn't want to be separated from her baby and called us jerks. The only person who took her side was her friend. So are we the jerks? I'm sorry if it seems insensitive, but if you're having a get-together and you're all young adults, and you're probably going to be going out and getting drinks and being loud, that's just not the environment for a kid to be around, and you kind of don't want to be around a kid, especially not a 5-month-old baby who is probably going to be very cranky. This next story is, would I be the jerk? My wife wants more time for herself when all she has to do is take care of our child. Me, 27-year-old male, and my wife, 25-year-old female, have a 6-month-old child. Before we had the child, we agreed that she would primarily be in charge of the childcare, while I would do practically everything else. This includes 95% of the chores and other housework. I'm the only one between the two of us that works a job, night shift security guard. I make dinner for the family, etc. I want to clarify some things before I get infoed in the comments. When I say I do 95% of the chores, I mean that my wife will do some of the dishes like the baby's bottles or cups when they need to be washed, and I'm asleep during the day, and occasionally fold a load of laundry that she needed a piece of clothing from before I can get around to it. I vacuum and mop the floors, do the laundry, the dishes, clean the bathrooms, cook dinner, and do the grocery shopping. She takes our child to doctor appointments, wakes up with them during the night on the days I'm at work, watches them during the day, and will make baby-specific meals. She'll puree vegetables and fruit and cut up the smaller portions of chicken. I do spend as much time as I can with our child. I wake them up in the mornings when I come home from work, and I feed them breakfast before I sleep. When I wake up, I'll try and play with them for about 30 minutes, doing reading and playing with whatever toy they're interested in for the week. During the weekends when I'm awake during the night, I'll be the one who gets up with our child. This is coming to a head because as we were eating dinner before I went to work, she asked if there was any way that I could watch our child more due to her feeling like she needs time for herself. At first, I thought that she wanted to have more weekend events with her friends while I was watching our child during the day. Something I'm more than okay with and have agreed with multiple times. Instead, she was asking that I sleep less during the days that I work, so she can have breaks from the child during the day. I told her that I would think about it at work and I want to say no. I understand that being a stay-at-home mom is stressful because you always have to watch the baby. But she doesn't do any chores, and from the way things were phrased, she wouldn't be willing to take up any chores during the new break I would be giving her. I don't have much time to myself either, but I do understand that she carries the stresses of watching our child most of the time while I don't. Would I be the jerk if I told my wife that I'm not willing to let her take a break from watching our child? I think OP's not the jerk, because if anybody needs a break, I think OP is the one that needs it. They're out there working, they're out there doing chores, providing food, money. Like, I'm not disrespecting taking care of a kid, I'm sure it's still feeling like a full-time job, but compared to a lot of people, they honestly don't have it too bad as far as taking care of a kid goes. Our next story is, am I the jerk for going on a weekend trip alone that my partner couldn't afford? Hey everyone, a little while ago I, 29-year-old female, saw a discount flight to a nearby city. It was a 12-hour sale. I have friends in the city and immediately texted them to make plans, which they agreed. I phoned my boyfriend, 31-year-old male, who I've been with for about a year. We don't live together or share finances, if he wanted to come. He told me that he couldn't afford it right now as things were tight, and he had his daughter, 4-year-old female, not mine, that same weekend. So I went without him. My boyfriend is furious with me. He said that since we've been dating for a year and are getting more serious, I've met his daughter and family, we're discussing moving in together next year, that we should make big decisions together and run weekend plans by each other. He also really wanted to visit said city another time, maybe next year. I told him I would be more than happy to visit again next year, since I have many friends there. I was gone for a weekend and spent my own money to visit my own friends, so I don't see the issue. I feel he's being controlling, and I did ask him to join me, but he views me as being a bad partner who doesn't function as a team. So Reddit, am I the jerk? I don't think OP's the jerk here. Maybe if you were married, there's some kind of conversation to maybe have, but like things aren't that close, your finances aren't shared. OP offered and reached out. It's not like they just went on it without ever mentioning it. Honestly, I think this is a pretty big red flag for OP. God forbid, don't saddle yourself with somebody that's going to hold you back because they're jealous they can't be there or they feel like they need to do everything with you. I just feel like if you're in a relationship where you allow somebody to have that control and influence you to not go to these kinds of things, you're at some point going to look back on that relationship and regret it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for being homophobic towards my best friend? I, 21-year-old male, have been best friends with whom I'll call Mike, 22-year-old male. Me and Mike have been friends since childhood, and we've never really had any big fights or problems before, so this was very unexpected, and I have no idea what to do. For some context, Mike is gay and came out to me when he was 18, and I've supported him the whole way. From helping him tell his parents and listening to his rants about his identity and helping him through it. I myself am straight, but I have nothing against the LGBTQ+ community. Mike knows this. Around last week, me and Mike were hanging out with our other friend Ava, 22-year-old female. We were drinking and just ranting about our lives. Later, Ava had to use the restroom, and when she left, Mike had touched me inappropriately. I'm not going to go into detail, but that's what happened. I told him to stop, and he didn't. I later left because I was uncomfortable, and I didn't know how to handle it because something like this had never happened to me before. About 2 days later, I messaged him about it, and I told him how I was upset and very uncomfortable with him crossing my boundaries, and that I wanted a break from our friendship for a little while. He didn't take that very well and claimed that I was being homophobic, and that I didn't want to be his friend anymore just because he was gay, which is the furthest thing from true. I didn't want to take a break from our friendship because we've been close since we were kids, but I could just not let what happened slide, in case it would ever happen again. Am I the jerk? If OP's looking for reassurance here, I think they absolutely should get that reassurance. They're clearly not the jerk here, and what happened here isn't homophobia, it's Mike committing a crime. This next story is, am I the jerk for uninviting my sister-in-law to Thanksgiving? I, 36-year-old female, and husband, 40-year-old male, are hosting Thanksgiving for the first time ever this year. Our older nephew, 20-year-old male, has recently come out as gay and asked if he could bring his boyfriend he's been seeing for a few months. We said of course. Last night my mother-in-law called and said my sister-in-law would not be coming. When I asked why, she said it was because of our nephew bringing the boyfriend. She's not blood related to him, it's on my side of the family, but she's been around him most of his life. I told her that was her choice and ended the convo. This morning, sister-in-law calls and asks if I told nephew not to come. I was shocked and asked why I would have. She went on about how she should be able to with the rest of the family without being uncomfortable. At that point, I got so mad I said, "What do you think, they'll screw on top of the turkey in front of Grammy?" And she started to cry and hung up. I've gotten calls from the family all day about how I shouldn't have handled it that way. My husband thinks it's funny, but his mom, who I'm very close with, is very upset. So, am I the jerk? Personally, I think if you're intolerant of people's life choices and sexuality, to the point where you're too disgusted to even go to a family event, then you probably should stay home, and I think OP is clearly not the jerk. Honestly, I love the way OP described it with a table comment. What I really don't understand about people who are homophobic is, why do they care? I think religion usually plays a pretty big part in it, but it's also not like they're going to just start doing some crazy displays right in front of everybody at the family get-together. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend she needs to stop with the herd mentality? Me, 23-year-old male, and my girlfriend, 27, were supposed to go on a date tomorrow to the amusement park. It was her idea, as she never had the chance to visit one when she was young. Since Monday when I made the promise, she was excited and won't stop talking about what she would do there. Sadly, somehow her mood got destroyed and she wasn't a fan of childish things anymore, as she puts it, which confused the heck out of me. I did ask what was wrong. She didn't give me an answer and just told me how I was stupid for suggesting an amusement park as a date instead of taking her to a expensive restaurant. Spending 3 years with her, I know the reason for her behavior had to be her family or her friend's fault. For as long as I've known her, she was quick to follow whatever her other people say over what she wants. It's caused many problems in the past where she becomes depressed after she noticed her mistake and blames people who had nothing to do with it, aka me. Turns out I was right. Her friends mocked her for saying that she was going to the amusement park. I tried to cheer her up, telling her that her friends don't know any better. She yelled at me and told me that I'm an awful man, always thinking of myself. I tried to defuse the situation by telling her I'm sorry, but that wasn't enough. At this point, I was already annoyed at her friends for putting me in this mess. I ended up telling her that she needed to stop with the herd mentality because she was just going to end up sad, never doing anything she wanted. And following a band of morons is never going to make her happy. Now she's crying and won't talk to me. Was I the jerk? I think OP's not the jerk. I think they're trying to be the voice of reason and get through to them that, hey, you deserve to do what you want. There's nothing wrong with being a Disney adult. There's nothing wrong with enjoying video games, with going to the park. There's nothing wrong if you want to swing on a swing set. There's nothing wrong if you want hot chocolate with marshmallows. There's nothing wrong if you want to get matching onesies and have a popcorn movie date. Whatever it is you want to do, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do that, and giving in to these people who try to judge you for that is just awful. I feel bad for OP because it sounds like they really do care for her, but she is really trapped in not being able to do things for herself. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my parents to pick between me and my sister for the holidays? I, 28-year-old male, am currently pretty much estranged from my family. I have a younger sister, female, 27, Tori. When one of my friends, Brendan, 28-year-old male, started dating Tori, I hated it at first, but eventually I gained a best friend. They got married in 2018 and I was the best man. Brendan's now like my brother. We're that close. In 2020, Tori left Brendan for another guy, reality TV type crap. My parents were incredibly upset, as was I. My sister moved in with the guy immediately. My parents knew I was pissed but had to support their daughter. I went no contact with Tori and little contact with my parents. In 2020, when Tori's second wedding happened, I didn't go. Me and my dad had it out over it. My mother tried playing peacekeeper for the family. My parents then started giving me the silent treatment. When the 2020 holiday season came around, it was the height of COVID. My parents said that I should just do my own thing this year because with me going out a lot, they didn't want me spreading diseases. My exact response was, if you're worried about catching diseases from other people, shouldn't you be more worried about Tori? I mean, she's the one who likes to sleep around. Me and my dad had another fight, especially due to his family over everything mantra. I hardly spoke to my family in 2021. My parents would send me texts like, "When you're ready to apologize, we'll be here," type crap. I responded with a Bible verse about adultery and how they support it. I was berated again, and we hardly spoke until October of 2021. Last year, I was told we were doing Thanksgiving at Tori's place, and if I wanted to come, I needed to apologize to Tori and her husband. I laughed and ended up going to Brendan's family's, where Brendan's mom posted me with her family on Facebook and tagged me with a quote about family being those you choose. I never told her to post it, but my mom saw it and went ape crap, asking for me to come over and talk and even commented on the post. So this year, my plan is to go to Brendan's family again. My mom called and said she wanted to host this year. I asked if Tori and her husband would be there. She said, of course, they're family. I said, so is Brendan, but I saw how you treated him and me, so no thank you. Yesterday, my dad called and said my mom is distraught and has been for years. She wants us all to get along, so I need to do the right thing. I said I'll come if my sister isn't invited. He said that he wouldn't do that to family. I said he did that to me for 2 years. He claimed I did it to myself. My mom is now saying that it was my dad that's been the hard butt about this the whole time. I said she should have divorced him then because I'm not putting up with his crap anymore. Either my sister isn't invited or I don't come. I've now had some extended family reach out and say that my parents are upset and hurt. I said my parents were totally okay with not having me around for 2 years. Am I the jerk? Honestly, I think everybody's at their throats here, and I think they're all scrambling to blame each other. Marriages break up, marriages don't last. People do cheat on each other, it sucks. But I don't think any of this should be the reason why this whole family is at odds with each other. Our next story is, am I the jerk for kicking my sister out of my apartment because she disclosed private information? I, 19-year-old female, have a sister, 23-year-old female, who helps out with the family dinner I host every Saturday with friends and family. When she came over early last Saturday to help prepare with me, I disclosed to her information that one would assume is private. I told her that I was hallucinating bugs in my bedroom in the last couple of days, and that I would jerk up from my sleep in the middle of the night. She told me that it seemed serious and I should get it checked up before it escalates. I ignored it and told her to just forget about it. We talked about things that had been on our minds as of recently. We were having a wholesome time preparing for this dinner party for our friends and family. Skip to when the dinner party begins. We greet everyone, do our usual conversing, and after an hour, we all sit to eat. After we all talk about recent thoughts and affairs, my sister announces that I'm going crazy, jokingly, whilst she was wine drunk. My mother asked her what she meant, and I made signals to her to stop speaking. She progressed and said, Rebecca's seeing things that aren't there and she can't sleep without jumping out of her sleep, and laughs it off. I leave my seat after everyone stares at me, completely embarrassed, and I can hear from the hallway that my sister's talking about how I always take everything seriously and that I need to loosen up. I go back in and tell her to get out of my house or I'll escort you out. She, of course, thought I was kidding. I grabbed her arm and she willingly walked with me till I was at the door and I told her to leave. She again informed me that she didn't know I wouldn't want others to know. I told her to go and she finally listened. It was completely awkward for the rest of the party and I avoided my mother. The next day, my mother emails me a psychiatrist's information details. My sister's been messaging me, claiming that it was an accident and that she never intended to hurt me. My relatives have all been asking me if I'm okay. I feel embarrassed. My father told me that I made a scene for nothing. Am I the jerk? I think OP's not the jerk. I think if you confide a certain thing in somebody like this, you should know that it's a sensitive thing, that you shouldn't go around just airing out. I mean, I get that they were wine drunk, but they were completely unapologetic about it regardless. It might be for the best though, because now it's out there, it might properly get addressed the way it does need to be addressed. Our next story is, am I the jerk for making my brother-in-law wait outside in the rain? I don't like my brother-in-law. We were both flying to visit his parents, and even though I said I would make my own way to the airport, he and my husband insisted both that I go with him. He showed up the day of our flight despite me telling him not to the day before. I was already running late and I didn't want him breathing down my neck, so I didn't open the door. It was raining and he kept knocking, but I ignored him at first and then told him I would come outside in 15 minutes when he wouldn't stop. He told me to open the door, but I said no and continued to ignore him. He's still mad at me and spent the entire drive and flight giving me dirty looks. He was also telling me off at first, but I told him I would tell my husband he was being nasty to me again, so he stopped. He did tell my husband what I did as soon as he arrived, and he asked me to apologize, but I've refused so far. Am I the jerk? Question, why is OP's husband treating them like OP is their kid or something? I think OP is not the jerk. They clearly don't like this person, they don't want to associate, and their wishes are just not being respected. Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to let my sister have contact with the children she gave up? Background, I, 34-year-old male, have adopted my sisters, Amelia, 36, children, Mason and Ethan, both 15, Charlie, 14, and AJ, 13. They've been with me for 4 years now. She hasn't seen them or tried to contact them for the whole time they've been with me. I recently had messages from her saying that she wants to see the boys again. I ignored them for a while, but discussed this with the boys' social worker. I was told they could decide whether they wanted to see her, but if they do, it has to be supervised by me and the social workers, which I was fine with. However, when I asked them, they all said that they didn't want to meet her. I asked them several times, separately and together, so they weren't being influenced by their brothers. I also asked their therapists to bring up their mom, but they all said the same. I told the social worker this. They spoke to them and confirmed that it wasn't in their best interests to force contact. The next time my sister messaged, I told her to contact their social worker to discuss it. She wasn't very happy with her answer and has been calling me a jerk for brainwashing the boys and refusing to let them see her. She's managed to turn my whole family against me, who are all now saying that I'm a jerk for not giving her another chance to reconnect with them. And I'm starting to doubt myself. I would never force the boys to see her, but I feel maybe I am the jerk because I didn't try hard enough to talk to them about it. OP is definitely not the jerk. The point is, you asked the kids, do they want to see her? They all said no, multiple times to multiple people. That should be the end-all be-all of the story, regardless of what any outsider who probably doesn't have a full proper understanding of everything here says. Our next story is, am I the jerk for dancing with a recently separated woman at a wedding while her ex-husband was in attendance? I recently attended my sister's wedding solo. At the reception, there was a slower type dance when I saw this really beautiful woman by herself. I went up to her and asked her if she would like to dance. She mentioned she was recently separated, so wasn't looking for anything romantic, but agreed to dance with me anyways. We then danced for a couple of songs and seemed to really enjoy each other's company. We actually ended up exchanging numbers and she left to go home. As I went outside for a smoke, I noticed a guy kind of glaring at me. I asked if he wanted to smoke, and he told me that I should lose her number. I just kind of ignored him and went back inside. I asked my sister who that guy was, and she told me that it was the woman's recent ex-husband. Technically, they were just separated, not yet divorced. When I told my sister what had happened, she said that the ex was a friend of the groom's, and that's why he still ended up going to the reception. She told me that I probably shouldn't be dancing with someone who was recently separated. I don't know, I feel like I really didn't do much wrong, but I do feel bad. I might have caused a scene with her ex. Am I the jerk? OP's not the jerk, and honestly, I say screw anybody that says, oh, well, they're recently separated, so you can't dance with them. What kind of malarkey is that? If somebody is fresh out of a breakup or a 25-year marriage and they want to go dancing with somebody, God forbid, they can go dancing with whoever they darn please. Our next story is, Am I the jerk for taking off my shoes on a flight? Recently, I traveled to another country to attend a metal concert. The flight was going to be an hour and a half to 2 hours. I only had a carry-on with me, but I wanted to wear my knee-high Doc Martens, which are heavy and big and wouldn't fit in my carry-on, and even if they did, they would be awkward to carry. But I also didn't fancy to sit in them for the duration of the flight in a small space. So I made sure they don't smell, preventatively sprayed them with shoe spray before I left home. When I sat down on my seat, I took my shoes off and put on fresh socks. My shoes were under my legs, they weren't bothering anyone. A lady was about to sit next to me and she saw that I didn't have shoes on and she freaked out, called me disgusting, etc. I tried explaining that I had clean socks, but she demanded I put my shoes back on. I refused. She called the stewardess and I explained again. The stewardess told her there was nothing she could do because I wasn't breaking any rules. The lady was huffing and puffing all throughout the flight. She also filmed me when she was berating me, so who knows, it may be online now. But I tried to ignore her and just put my headphones on. The lady even complained about this when we were giving our passports, and they ignored her as well. I told my friends about this and they're kind of divided. Some agree with me and some say it's kind of gross and I could have been more accommodating and put my shoes on. Am I the jerk for taking my shoes off? I would say you would be the jerk if you took your shoes off and you could tell they legitimately did stink. But I think the end-all be-all is the stewardess said, "You're not breaking any rules. You weren't really being disgusting. You went out of your way to be considerate and make sure you're not stinking." And depending on the length of flight, I think it's normal-ish for people to take their shoes off. This next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to leave the room when my husband told me to? My husband's best friend, female, got the news of her dog's cancer days ago. My husband would call her every day till yesterday when she visited. I opened the door for her, greeted her, and then led her to the living room and went into the kitchen to get a glass of water after my husband asked me. I came back and didn't find them in the living room. Turns out they went into the guest room and the door was shut. I heard weeping and sobbing sounds coming from the inside. I knocked, then got in and found them embracing each other crying. I stood by the door, but my husband paused and told me to give them a moment. I gotta say that I didn't feel comfortable with his request, so I remained standing. He got up and started repeatedly telling me to get out. I told him it's my house, and he can't tell me where I can and can't stay. He got angry and told me to get out and we'll talk later, but I refused. He asked what was wrong with me for not seeing how tense the situation was and for not giving them privacy. I told him that they did not need to shut the door for any reason, no matter what it was. We argued and she ended up leaving. He blew up at me afterwards, calling me unbelievable and saying I had no respect for him and his friend, who's going through a hard time and refusing to give them privacy. I told him how weird it was for them to just shut the door just because they were crying. He told me that I was petty and overbearing to act like this in front of her and stopping him from showing proper support. Now he's gone completely radio silent and is acting like I kicked her out or treated her poorly. Some context. Ages of those involved is 26-year-old female, 28-year-old female, and 31-year-old male. 2, she's been his best friend/sister for like over 8+ years. 3, she tends to be very emotional and highly sensitive. 4, we don't get along because she tends to be a boundary stomper and does and says things that make me feel like I don't know my husband as much as she does. She also compares us as well. And 5, initially I didn't want her to come to the house, but my husband called her and told her to come since he didn't see her after the news was received till yesterday. So I don't know if this just says more about me and my comfort with things, but I feel like OP's not the jerk. If I was in an OP situation, I would be feeling mighty uncomfortable too. And especially the fact like they need to close the door. They need to hold this girl. I don't know. Honestly, I do feel for them, but the behavior and the requests seem a bit red flag triggering. Am I the jerk for saying my sister was harassing my wife? I'll just get right to it. I'm 35-year-old male. My sister, who we'll call Jane, 24-year-old female, is staying with me and my wife, who we'll call Sue, 32-year-old female, while completing a prestigious internship in our city. My sister also has disabilities but has lived independently, has held jobs, takes care of herself, etc. She has totally attached herself to Sue since she doesn't have many friends. Sue likes Jane well enough but finds her pushy and overbearing. Sue is pretty good-natured and knows this is temporary, so she usually just laughs it off. The one thing she will not laugh off is that Jane will follow Sue everywhere if she wants to talk, and even tries to follow Sue into the bathroom or our bedroom. Sue doesn't leave mid-conversation unless she really needs the bathroom, but it seems like Jane magically finds something she desperately needs to talk about right when Sue is leaving the room. It's never anything important, just chit-chat. We do have locks on the door, but Jane tries to follow Sue in, so she can't shut the door quickly enough to keep Jane on the other side. Sue has told Jane directly and clearly that our room is always off limits unless there's an emergency, and the bathroom is off limits when someone is occupying it. Sue said it was okay if Jane waits outside and talks to her through the door, which I already think is too accommodating, but Jane ignores her and laughs it off, saying that they have the same parts, and since they're close, Sue shouldn't be worried about using the bathroom in front of her. Sue said that she didn't care who had what parts. Bathroom time is private and that's that. I agreed and told my sister to knock it off. My sister started complaining about this, so I asked her, "Jane, do you follow your coworkers at your internship into the bathroom?" She laughed and said, "No, that would be harassment." I said the same rule applies in our home. You are harassing Jane and not respecting her wishes for privacy. If this ever happens again, I'm kicking you out. She burst into tears and ran to her room, where she called our parents, who told me that I was sick and disgusting for implying that my sister was capable of doing that to Sue, and that I was stopping my sister from bonding with my wife in her own way. I told them that if they felt that way, they could come get her or pay for an apartment in our city because we weren't tolerating it anymore. I know I'm not the jerk for standing up for my wife, but I'm wondering if saying Jane harassed Sue was too far. I think OP's not the jerk here. I think it's pretty much exactly what's going on. I hope for everybody's sake here that they can get through to Jane. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you love getting the chance to decide whether or not somebody is just a total jerk, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my wife that her investing losses are not my problem? I, 30-year-old male, come from a very poor family, but my wife is from a very rich one. She started off the marriage with a net worth of $31 million, and I started it off with $300,000 in student debt. When we got married, she made me get a prenup that separated her inheritance and got rid of my right to an elective share if she dies. In other words, I renounced my spousal right to a third of her separate property if she passed, making her sole beneficiaries her siblings or potential children. My debt and our incomes were also separated. We both got lawyers, hers much more expensive than mine, and notarized the prenup. None of this was a problem for me. As a man, I'm determined to pull myself up by the bootstraps, not rely on my wife's wealth for anything. The only beneficial part of the prenup for me was that our incomes were also now separate, and I earned a somewhat higher income than her, and so I was okay with it overall. 5 years later, I still don't have a seventh of her current wealth, but her investments haven't been doing great this year either. As a sole crypto investor, things have been going very poorly for her. I had warned her not to do this, but she invests in a cryptocurrency called Monero, which is down 47% this year. About 5% of her money wasn't in her wallet, and was in the FTX exchange itself, which she lost after FTX went bankrupt recently. She now has a net worth of around $18 million. I don't invest in crypto, but rather in index funds. They've taken a hit this year as well, but based on historical performance, they should go back up eventually. No such guarantee for cryptocurrencies, and certainly not for Monero. I came home to her crying the other day after she found out that FTX went bankrupt. I told her, "That's rough," not in a sarcastic way, and I went upstairs to change. When I got back downstairs, she started whining and complaining, talking about how nonchalant I was being about her losing money. I pointed out that she's still extraordinarily rich in spite of her poor choices, and that she could stop investing in crypto at any time if she wanted to. Besides, she was the one that wanted to separate everything, so why does she want to make it my problem all of a sudden? Am I the jerk? This is a really tricky one. I feel like I have a good angel on my one shoulder saying, "That's your wife, comfort her, she's experiencing a difficult time." And then the devil on the other shoulder being like, "That's a multi-millionaire that's taken some small beatings. And also that multi-millionaire went out of their way to make sure you don't get a dime of that regardless." I don't know what their relationship with each other is like, but it's hard for me to blame somebody for not comforting a multi-millionaire when their investments aren't exactly being a boon. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not returning my mom's ring? I, 28-year-old male, and my ex-girlfriend Mela, 28-year-old female, were together for 7 years. Mela was obsessed with marriage. She literally had a Pinterest full of wedding ideas for years. Around year 4 of our relationship, she started outright saying that she wanted to be married and wanted to be proposed in this way or that way, and basically making plans. I told her that I would think about it. While I loved her, I wasn't sure if marriage was for me. We had an argument and she made an ultimatum. Either I propose or we break up. I didn't make a decision and she broke up with me. I realized I wanted her in my life and I proposed. My mom gave me her engagement ring, which wasn't Mela's style or size, but she seemed happy. I started getting second thoughts and we got into a fight. Mela took off the ring and gave it back to me. We broke up and we went our separate ways. I took that as she was giving me the ring. Mela and my mom were close and she was invited to the wedding. Mela's getting married to Devin, 25-year-old male, who's apparently head over heels for her, and bought her a $15,000 engagement ring. My mom wanted to wear her best jewelry for the wedding, as it was a lavish event, and asked for her ring back. I told her that I won't give her the engagement ring back as it was mine, and I didn't want Mela to see the engagement ring that she was supposed to have, since it would probably make her feel bad since she married the first guy who was there. My mom's upset, my family's calling me a jerk, my dad, who made the ring, said I was a selfish brat. I keep getting nasty emails from relatives about the situation. Am I the jerk? I think it was given to you as a gift for the engagement, and considering you never truly used it, I think it's totally fair to give it back to them, and it's a bit weird to say, "No, it's mine now." Like, what are you even using it for? I think it might be better for OP to give it back to their mom because I feel like OP's having some weird attachment issues with it. This next story is, am I the jerk for wanting my daughter to meet my girlfriend despite being an absent father? I, 29-year-old male, had a kid with my ex-wife, 32-year-old female, 10 years ago, my daughter. And there's no real way to sugarcoat this, but as soon as she was born, I left. And I never ended up seeing her in the hospital as a baby. Was never really present in her life at any point, but ended up getting a divorce 11 months later with her getting full custody, of course. I married young, was really stupid, and thought I'd end up being a good dad despite no skills, but got scared that I would turn out like my dad and chickened out. Not really an excuse, but an explanation, I guess. I paid child support for the first 3 years, but stopped afterwards. I've been speaking with the girl's mother about reconnecting with her, but she thinks it's best I stay out of their lives majorly. But I think making amends is always possible, so I'm not sure. I just really want to make things right, but I'll respect their decision. I've seen her a few times, but her mother's always introduced me as a friend. She says she'll tell her when she's ready. I've been dating a girl, 28-year-old female, for about 10 months, and I really like her. I think I could definitely see a life for us, and I know that sounds weird, but she's also said the same. I was also speaking to my daughter's mother about meeting this girl, but she says absolutely not, and that's a bad idea. But if I want to reintroduce her into my life, isn't it fair that she gets to see my life too? Am I the jerk for this? Her mother says it's a very bad idea, so it's making me think I am, but I just genuinely cannot see why. Obviously, I care for this girl and I'll care for her life too, but a relationship has to be two-sided. I don't think it's out of the question to show her my life too. Personally, I'm not sure how to feel. Maybe it's the fact that I just have no concept of how it would feel to be a father in that position. But OP had abandoned them and then quit supporting them a long time ago. So for them to just pop back up and be like, "Hey, by the way, I'm your dad, here I am, here's my life," I could see why that would be a lot for the kid. And is OP really sure that like once they appear and become a part of that life that they're gonna still stick around? Or are they gonna be afraid again and dip? I mean, OP stopped supporting them 7 years ago. Our next story is, am I the jerk for leaving my wife at the store after waiting an hour and a half for her? So today was my day off during the week, which I like to use for cleaning the house, running errands, and relaxing in the evening. So my wife and I were running errands with our 2 kids, 2-year-old and 3 months, and everything was going fine. We got groceries, washed the car, and made a stop at a store about 20 or 30 minutes away from home. It's getting close to the time we have dinner, so we start heading home. As we're going home, my wife says we need to stop by a department store so she can pick up something she ordered that they shipped to the store. That's fine, the store's on the way home, about 15 minutes from our house. My wife assures me it'll only be like 10 minutes. That's cool. As we're driving to the store, the older child falls asleep because they didn't get their nap. So I tell her to run in and I'll stay in the car with the kids. She goes in, 10 minutes go by, 20 minutes go by. No problem. Maybe there's a line. 30 minutes, 40 minutes, she's still gone. I call her to see if she's okay. No answer. I call her again at 50 minutes and she says she hasn't picked the thing up because she saw something she wanted to try on, so she's been doing that. I ask her to finish up so we can go home because our kid is tired and needs dinner and bed. I wait, still nothing. After an hour I call again and she says she's gonna be a while. Her mom showed up and they're trying stuff on. I tell her to please hurry, the car's been running, gas is expensive, and our kids are starting to wake up. Again, she says she's almost done. During this time, both of our kids wake up and start screaming and crying. I get the older one calmed down, but the younger is hungry, and my boobs don't work that way, so I can't feed him. It's been an hour and a half. I call her and tell her I'm leaving with the kids because they're starving and tired. She can get a ride home with her mom who lives near us. She huffs and says she's coming, so I wait another 10 minutes and she's still not there, so I leave. As I'm driving, I get angry calls from her and mother-in-law about how could I abandon my wife at the store like that. My mother-in-law says that I was a jerk and way out of line. So Reddit, am I the jerk? OP's wife was taking far too much advantage of them. I don't blame them for leaving, especially with 2 very cranky, very hungry kids in the car. I don't care whatever the wife was doing in the store, it should not have taken them that amount of time. An hour and a half is like to the point where they secretly just wanted time to themselves and were willing to lie to keep them in the parking lot like that to get it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not wanting to hold or touch my girlfriend's sister's baby? I've been dating my girlfriend for about a year and a half, and I made it pretty clear early on that I really don't like children because of many reasons. Don't like them, don't want them. Well, her teenage 19 sister decided to have a kid. I think it wasn't a smart decision, and I hinted at that to my girlfriend without being rude, and the baby, male, was born about a month ago. The baby daddy's not in the picture. My girlfriend loves to help take care of it and has been trying to get me to interact with him and hold him. She's been getting upset with me because I refuse to hold him and occasionally call him it. She really tried getting me to hold him today so she could do something, but I don't want him throwing up on me or any number of things. But she thinks I'm being a jerk. I'm sure I could act a little more sympathetic, but I just don't care to have anything to do with the baby. Am I the jerk? I think OP's not the jerk. They're not obligated to interact, hold, care for in any way for this baby. I will say they probably need to reconsider the whole it thing because that's just pointlessly rude. I get not wanting to hold or interact with the baby, but you don't have to call it an it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not getting on a flight upon finding out that he put my kids in economy? So my fiance has 3 kids from his former marriage, whilst I have 2 from my former marriage as well. I quit my job to start focusing on getting my degree. He's become the breadwinner, if you will. Although I still contribute with my savings, I also do 80% of childcare and chores. Long story short, he wanted me and my kids to attend Thanksgiving with his family, who are located across country, and we were supposed to go yesterday, ahead of time to get a rental place. He booked our tickets and everything, but later, before the flight, I found out that he, his kids, and myself were put in first class, while my two kids, 14 and 10, were put in economy. I was stunned. He acted like it was no big deal and told us it's just a few hours and the kids could just hang in there for a little while. I asked how he could think this was acceptable, and he got mad and said that he's the one paying for tickets, then we go by his rules. I immediately turned around and took the kids and made my way out of the airport. He started following us, screaming at me to go back, but I refused and told him that I no longer felt like spending Thanksgiving with his folks after this. My youngest cried because she never flew without me. He went with his kids. Me and my kids are home. He has not stopped calling, trying to berate me, and even had his mom text that I needed to get over myself and stop teaching my kids to be spoiled and entitled. She said that the fact that I was willing to miss Thanksgiving with the family over something so trivial shows my real character and personality and mindset, or lack thereof. I haven't replied, but I feel horrible. Am I the jerk? Should I have just let it slide and just went? In case I wasn't clear, me and the kids left our family and hometown so we could go celebrate with his family in his hometown. My kids weren't too excited leaving their grandparents for a week or so. I think OP's not the jerk. It's incredibly weird of them to book all of you guys in first class and leave a 10 and 14-year-old, direct relation or not, in economy. I mean, if that doesn't show you how they view everything, then I don't know what does. And with the way they blew up, the guy kinda sounds like a jerk too. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my wife that not every major milestone can go back to her mother? My wife lost her mother to cancer 2 years ago. It was horrible and it took a toll on everyone, but obviously my wife more than anything. They were very close, pretty much best friends. We knew it was coming and the illness took over our lives, which is to be expected. I also knew my wife would struggle when she finally did pass, so I tried to convince her to go to therapy, but she's refused. We have 2 older children, 13 and 6, and this year she gave birth to our youngest. This is the only grandchild my mother-in-law never got to meet. The whole pregnancy was very bittersweet, and my wife kept saying, "I wish mom was here. I wish mom could meet him," etc. Again, to be expected. But the issues come up that even before our son was born, every event went back to her mom. At first I understood, but in time, it's become like we've had this cloud hanging over us, preventing us from fully enjoying happy moments. I've tried talking to my wife about it, gently, but she gets super defensive and refuses to even talk therapy. Our eldest turned 13 over the weekend. She had spoken to their mom privately and said that she would really like for there to be no talk of her grandmother. She wanted to have a happy celebration and not get sad that her grandmother isn't there. My wife agreed. We went out to dinner and everything was fine. Towards the end, we had cake. My wife said, "It's just so sad that grandma can't be here. She would be so proud of who eldest has turned out to be. I wish he could be here." Our eldest got mad. She blew out her candles but didn't speak the rest of the dinner. When we got home, I spoke to my wife privately and said what she did wasn't fair. I said she could have excused herself if she was that emotional, but she honestly didn't seem to be. I told her that this can't continue to happen. She told me that wasn't fair. I said what isn't fair is this rain cloud she forces over us. She's been off ever since and won't really talk to me or our eldest. She says we're being insensitive. Am I the jerk? I think OP's not the jerk. I think the problem is you're trying to be as respectful as possible. You're suggesting trying to get them help and assistance, which is all you really can do, and they're just in utter denial. I don't know what more you can do other than trying to convince them that they do need some therapy. They're just obviously very deep in it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for saying my girlfriend thinks she knows better than culinary professionals and expressing my disapproval? I, 26-year-old male, live with my girlfriend, 27-year-old female of 4 years, and we try to split all the grocery shopping and cooking duties equally. We both like cooking well enough and pay for subscriptions to several recipe websites, Epicurious, New York Times, and consider it an investment because sometimes there's really creative stuff there, especially since we've had to cut back on food spending recently and eating out often isn't viable. It's nice to have some decent options if we're feeling in the mood for something better than usual. I make it sound like we're snobs, but we eat box macaroni like once a week. Because we work different hours, even though we're both work from home, we almost never cook together. So I didn't find out until recently that she makes tweaks to basically every recipe she cooks. I had a suspicion for a while that she did this because I would use the same recipe to make something she did previously, and it would turn out noticeably different. But I brushed it off as her having more experience than me. But last week I had Veterans Day off on a day that she always had off, and we decided to cook together because the chance to do it doesn't come up often. I like to have the recipe on my tablet, and while I was prepping stuff, I kept noticing how she would do things out of order or make substitutions for no reason and barely even glanced at the recipe. It got to the point where I was concerned she was going off the rails. So I would try to gently point out when she would do things like put in red pepper when the recipe doesn't call for it, or twice the salt. She dismissed it, saying that we both prefer spicier food or that the recipe didn't call for enough salt to make it taste good because they were trying to make it look healthier for the nutrition section. It's not like I think her food tastes bad or too salty, but I genuinely don't understand what the point of the recipe is or paying for the subs if she's just going to make stuff up. And there's always a chance that she's going to ruin it and waste food if she changes something. I got annoyed and said that the recipe was written with what it has for a reason. And she said she knows what we like I don't. So I said she didn't know better than the professional chefs who make the recipes we use, and neither do I, obviously. She got really offended and said, "I always did this." And when I asked what this was, she said I also got mad at her once because she'd made all the bits left over after cooking into weird Frankenstein meals. I barely remembered this until she brought up that time she made parm grilled cheese and I wouldn't even eat it. She mixed tomato paste, parm, and a bit of mayo to make a cheese filling because it was all we had. Yeah, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, even though she claimed it tasted good. She called me stiff and closed-minded, so I said I didn't get why she couldn't follow directions. Even kids could follow a recipe, and it's been almost a week, and we're both still sore about it. I have nothing against OP if they really wanted to try out this recipe to the letter, but I do know that if you cook for yourself a bit, you kind of know what you like and you kind of know what adjustments might make things a little bit more likable to your palate. It seemed like relatively minor things, a little bit more salt, some pepper, for OP to then go, "Oh, you ruined it, you didn't follow the recipe at all." I mean, those are very, very minor adjustments just to add some extra flavoring. This next story is, am I the jerk for agreeing with her ex and not my sister? As a kid, I always looked up to my older sis because she was so cool, pretty, and the popular girl. I always tried to be like her, dressed like her, listened to her music. You get the idea. I was popular the first time I stepped through the high school door because I was basically a copy of her. I was overwhelmed by the attention, but quickly found out that she was mostly popular with only the guys. She dated many of the guys in our high school, and they thought I would too. I was so embarrassed. I had our mom take me out to buy new clothes and everything. Whatever she did, I went the opposite way. She wore tons of makeup, I wore none. She listened to a certain type of music, I didn't. We went to different colleges. Fast forward to now, sis must have figured out her lifestyle wasn't healthy, so she stopped dating a bunch of men, deleted all of those apps, and met Sam. He's very good looking with a great personality and amazing job. He was smart, funny, outgoing, and can own the entire room when he walks in. He grew up in a different city, so his family doesn't live here, but we've met and they're amazing just like him. Sam quickly replaced us as mom's favorite child and became our dad's best friend. He eventually proposed and everyone was over the moon. I was very happy for sis. Last week, she came to my door looking like a complete wreck. She was crying so hard she couldn't talk. After an hour or so, I calmed her down enough to get the story. Apparently they were at a party and were mingling separately when he overheard some guys talking about her popularity. Sam joined the group and got her dating history. 2 of the guys in that group dated her, and about 4 other guys at that party did too, one of whom works with him, which is why they were there. He heard about the guys laughing about how all the men in town were depressed when she went away to college, but rejoiced when she came back. When they got home, he asked her, She told him the truth, and he left without saying a word. I helped sis, and she's been staying with me for now. She hasn't told anyone and has been trying to get in touch with Sam and his family, but they're all ignoring her. Everyone on our side is super confused because Sam just disappeared. Our cousin, my best friend, pinned me down the other day to ask what happened. I told her, and she was appalled. She called him all sorts of names and insecure. I said I can understand from his view, as we live in a small town, and it's hard to know many men, and your coworkers know your future wife. Then me and my cousin got into it. She said I should be supporting my sis no matter what. I argued I am supporting her, but it doesn't mean I have to agree with her. Now I might lose my best friend. I mean, regardless of what you yourself think about dating around, like whether you decide that's for you or not, that's entirely your own thing, but to shame somebody else and say, oh, their partner's completely valid about dumping them, never responding after finding out about their body count, I think it's a jerk move. That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for calling the police on my mother-in-law? I, 28-year-old female, got married to my husband, 34-year-old male, a week ago. We got engaged about a year ago, and when I got engaged, my mother gave me a pair of earrings, which she said every woman for generations in our family has worn to their weddings. They're 4-carat dangling earrings, and they're worth a lot. I felt very honored to be given them, and it made me feel closer to my grandmother who had died 2 months prior. About 3 months after that, I went wedding dress shopping with my mother, my sister, and my fiance's mother. I brought all the jewelry that I would be wearing to my wedding to see how they match the dresses. When I put the jewelry on, my mother-in-law kept going on about how gorgeous the earrings were. My mother explained the story and how they were a family heirloom passed down generations. I found the dress of my dreams and bought it. On the day of my wedding, I had everything ready in my room. My wedding dress, my flowers, my shoes, my makeup, and my jewelry. I was in there with my soon-to-be mother-in-law. I then needed to go to the toilet, and when I came back, my mother-in-law was gone. I wasn't sure what had happened, but I just thought that maybe she got called away to do something. I then noticed my earrings were gone. I knew straight away that she had taken them. I found her and confronted her, and she said that she didn't take them. I asked if I could look through her bag, and she said no and gripped onto it. I said that if she didn't let me look, I would call the police, which I then did, as she still wouldn't let me look. The police arrived and searched her, and the earrings were found in her bag. They were returned to me, and they asked if I wanted to press charges. I wanted to talk to my fiancé first, and he said that he would support me if I wanted to. I didn't want to decide in that moment, so I just ignored it and had a great night. That was a week ago, and ever since then, I've been getting loads of threatening messages and calls from my husband's side of the family. My mother-in-law has been sending me extremely hateful texts, and I think I want to press charges, but I'm still not sure if it's a good idea. What I really don't understand here is if they're gonna go and try to steal that and they're in a situation where OP didn't press charges, why would they all of a sudden start drumming the entire family up and making them look like incredible predatory jerks? I feel like if you're doing that, you're opening yourself up to two possibilities. One, OP rolls over, or two, OP goes forward with holding you accountable because why are you giving them such a hard time? Not only do you got sticky fingers for some very important valuables, but you're gonna try to get all your relatives to basically threaten OP? They deserve to get held liable for what they did because of that. Am I the jerk for uninviting my mother-in-law from Thanksgiving because she refuses to eat my cooking? This year, I, 32-year-old female, am hosting Thanksgiving at my house, and I've been working all month on coming up with the menu and testing all my recipes. I'm so excited to share my cooking with my family, and my husband, 35-year-old male, has been supportive and helpful through all the planning and prep work. I've bought all the ingredients, and I have a beautiful variety of dishes planned, both traditional and a few unique additions. Well, today, my husband dropped the bombshell on me that his mother-in-law wants to bring her own dinner to eat when she comes over. I asked him why she should need to bring her own food when I'll have more than enough here. He just made excuses saying that I know how his mother is a grade A picky eater and she won't like anything I've prepared. I thought that was ridiculous. I'm not making anything unfamiliar to her and there will be plenty to choose from. He argued that her bringing her own dinner would be a good compromise. And I disagree. It will be hugely obvious that she's making a comment on my cooking, and it would be humiliating to have her there eating something completely different in front of everyone. It's like she's trying to make a point of showing that my cooking isn't good enough for her. I think she's being incredibly rude and disrespectful of the time, money, and labor I've put into this upcoming meal. I told him if she can't eat anything here, then she's welcome to stay at home and eat whatever she wants. My husband's now calling me insensitive and petty. He says I'm ruining the holiday. I don't see it that way. I only want friends and family around who are appreciative and kind. I don't need the negativity of someone rejecting everything I've cooked and insulting my cooking when I've worked so hard. This has truly been a labor of love, and I took on this responsibility to share that love with my family and friends. Am I the jerk for not wanting my mother-in-law to come if she's going to reject everything I've made? I think OP's not the jerk here because this isn't a situation where OP's cooking is clearly bad, and this isn't a situation where there's dietary restrictions that aren't being respected. This is like going to a restaurant just to sit at the table, and when you sit down, you break out your Happy Meal that you brought with you. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting the chance to decide whether or not somebody is an absolute jerk, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for offering 2 different kinds of cake at our wedding? My husband Josh, 29, and I, 27, just had our wedding a couple weeks ago, and we mostly got good feedback until today we've heard that a lot of people have been smack-talking the cake behind our backs. Josh and I were originally going to have a smaller wedding at a resort. We were fortunate enough to be given some money to invite extra guests. So we decided to expand the wedding and have some of our second cousins and their kids, and some friends that we otherwise don't get to see as often. We're on a budget, so we decided to keep the fancy cake, the cutting cake for the pictures, not the real cake, for immediate family, and the pastor and a few members of the wedding party that we've known for the longest. We gave them the cake in boxes to take home though, so they wouldn't be eating it in front of everyone else. Minus the pastor because he flew out from a ways and he's vegan, so he couldn't eat the dinner, and we wanted him to have something to eat before it got too late. We got a couple of sheet cakes. One was vanilla and buttercream with rosettes, and then there was another sheet cake of pineapple chocolate chunk, especially for Josh's side of the family, because they spend a lot of time in Florida. We found out from talking with family that there was a lot of full slices left behind on people's plates of the pineapple cake, which the servers would not take home with them, so we noticed you can see it in a lot of the pictures. We were having too much fun to notice at the time. We loved catching up with all of our guests. Apparently Josh's family didn't like the cake that we thought they would, and there's been some unkind words behind our backs. We got a text from Josh's uncle that wasn't meant for us to see, and it really stung. We're unsure where to go from here and what to say. The cake didn't go off like we hoped, but we think they're being unnecessarily mean. By the way, there was a full dinner, 3 kinds of cheese, even Monterey Jack available, and an open bar that didn't close until late. So I feel like we were pretty good to our guests on a shoestring budget. I think OP's not the jerk, but I think they went a little too all in on the pineapple cake. And I don't exactly know what pineapple has to necessarily do with Florida. If they were Hawaiian, I could understand that. I mean, everybody knows pineapple can be a pretty divisive food. People might be a lot more divisive on pairing pineapple and chocolate than you think they would. Lord knows how they feel about pineapple on pizza. Our next story is, am I the jerk for calling the cops and causing him to be taken in for taking my car key and using it while I was sleeping? So I've been seeing this guy, 30-year-old male, Kevin, for several of months now. We'd visit each other weekly, and last week he spent the night with me. Next morning I woke up at 9 a.m. and couldn't find him nor my car. I searched for my car key that was at the bottom drawer in my son's room. I usually hide it in there, and no one knows about this secret place. But I couldn't find it. I freaked out and tried calling Kevin, but his phone was dead. So I ended up calling the police after waiting for like 10 minutes. Shortly after, I discovered that Kevin was found with my car at the supermarket's parking lot. He'd been taken in by authorities and the car was returned. He was fuming at me, saying I shouldn't have called the cops because he took the car to go buy us breakfast. In my defense, I said he never asked for my permission and I never gave him the okay to drive it. He argued that he thought I wouldn't mind, much less escalate and call the cops after he's done a nice thing for me and my son. He said he never had issues with cops, but because of me, now they thought he was a thief. We haven't talked since then. His brother keeps berating me, saying I messed up and acted stupidly. Am I the jerk for freaking out and calling the cops? I didn't even know how he got the key. 100% not the jerk. Literally and figuratively, leave this guy in the rearview mirror and don't look back. This guy was very clearly snooping in your kid's room, in your kid's drawers. Stole your car? Our next story is, am I the jerk for not going on a family vacation if my cousin brings her kids? Background, I, 28-year-old female, have been going to school full-time and working full-time, and teaching fitness classes as a side gig for the past 4 years. The 2 years before that, I was juggling 2 to 3 jobs at a time to save up for school. I can count on one hand the number of small breaks I've had in the last 6 years. I'm very tired, but graduate in a few short weeks. The situation, since my schedule's freeing up, my parents and 2 older sisters decided that we wanted to go on a week's vacation early next year. We've been planning and discussing, and so far it's just been the 5 of us. My mom called me this past weekend and said that my oldest sister wanted to invite my cousin on vacation with us, and asked what I thought. I immediately said that I wouldn't be coming if she was too. My cousin has a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and she would absolutely be bringing them if she came. I cannot imagine anything less relaxing than being on vacation with 2 toddlers. And as I said, I haven't been on vacation in 6 years. My mom said she agreed with me but was pretty neutral on the whole situation, but she would tell my sister that my cousin couldn't come. Flash forward to last night, and my oldest sister called and told me I was a complete jerk for not letting my cousin come on vacation with us. She was raging. We got into a fight about it and haven't talked since. The rest of my family's staying out of it. I think OP's not the jerk because they clarified that they personally are not going if the toddlers are there. I completely understand not wanting to go on a vacation if you're gonna have 2 cranky toddlers to basically co-babysit. This was an OP saying don't invite her. This was OP saying I just don't want to go if she's going to be there with the toddlers. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not giving my sister, who's a single mom, my share of inheritance? My 35-year-old female, last remaining grandmother passed away last month. That side of the family is Jewish, and it's customary to give inheritance to the grandkids in Jewish families. My sister, 27-year-old female, is a single mom of 3, one with special needs. All have different dads, none are in the picture. One is in jail, another one was a one-night stand in Vegas, doesn't even remember his first name, and the other is just an unemployed deadbeat. She's drowning in debt, mostly medical bills for a special needs child, and got fired from multiple jobs due to always having to call out due to her special needs child having some medical emergency. She's months behind on rent, but the landlord hasn't evicted her because he feels sorry for her. My husband, 42-year-old male, and I are child-free by choice. While we aren't Vanderbilts by any stretch, we do have a comfortable lifestyle. We were going to use my portion of the inheritance for a down payment on a house. We live in an apartment, albeit a nice one, and to treat ourselves to a nice vacation in Europe. I've never been there, but darling husband and I've always wanted to go. My sister's portion of the inheritance will cover some of her debt. She wants to pay off creditors first because they're threatening to take her to court while the landlord is showing more leniency. But my family's saying that I should give her my share of the inheritance because that would cover almost all of her debt. She wasn't spending frivolously, it was mostly the mounting medical bills for my special needs nephew, and it's more important than a house because we're fine in our apartment, and this is more urgent. I'm no prude or S-shamer, but the bottom line is, my sister was reckless in having unprotected sex with multiple men and getting pregnant by 3 separate ones, who for various reasons can't or don't help, and that's not my fault. I don't feel my husband and I should have to sacrifice our dream of being homeowners, which is incredibly hard to do these days, and having to sacrifice this vacation I've always wanted to go on. I was responsible and think I made good choices, and I don't think I should have to suffer consequences for her poor decisions. Am I the jerk? This is one of those situations where you're a darling angel if you do help them out, but you're also not liable to bail them out for where they've ended up after making the decisions they did. This isn't about shaming them. This isn't about sentencing them. I guess the question is, when you have this inheritance, should you feel guilt for not just giving it to your sibling to bail them out? Should you feel guilt if you just use it for yourself to further yourself along when you're already functioning all right? While a lot of people might feel guilty, I don't think you have to feel guilt because of it, and I don't think you're the jerk for keeping your inheritance to yourself. Like a lot of people point out, I'm willing to bet that any of those other family members that are shaming them or calling them out, if they had gotten that inheritance, they probably wouldn't be jumping hand over fist to also give it to OP's sister. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my daughter I won't be coming to her wedding? My baby daddy was a narcissistic jerk and was often emotionally abusive to me and made me cry regularly. We had a daughter, Mia, 22-year-old female. He left when she was about 8, but regularly sent about $1,500 a month to watch her while he traveled the world. Mia would often cry about him missing her birthday, but he would make it up by sending her consoles and makeup, but it still hurt her that the guy didn't even bother showing up to her birthday. Mia's getting married soon, and we were working on the guest list, and when we were talking about who was walking her down the aisle, she would constantly switch the conversation, and me and my husband asked about it, and she said that she wants her bio dad to walk her down the aisle. My husband said, "BS, I've been raising you forever, it's not fair." And Mia replied, "My real dad bought me a car, he paid for my surgery, he even sent me money for a dog." My husband looked heartbroken and went out of the house and told me he was going to the bar. Mia looked at me and said, "Sorry, Mom, but I want him. I know you and him have bad blood, but I want him to do it. I've been sending letters and he's been sending them back." I then said something I regretted. I said, "If you invite him, I'm not giving you my wedding dress or coming." Mia started tearing up and said, "Fine, don't come," and ran out. Now my family's calling me heartless. Now I feel alone. I think if you utterly despise this person, you don't want to associate them, you don't want to be near them, you have every right to say that you're not going, that you don't want to support something that in an indirect way kind of supports that guy. I mean, this guy was all around awful to OP, so I don't blame them for not going or not supporting it. Although I think OP would be the jerk if at any point they try to convince them or force their daughter to take their stepdad as the one walking them down the aisle. The daughter has every right to decide who is at and who participates in what way at their own wedding. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my partner his holiday, Thanksgiving, is not important to me and not celebrating? I'm English, living in the US whilst I finish my university course. As soon as I've finished, I plan on going home. My boyfriend's always said he'll come with me, especially because we're expecting a baby. I want the baby to grow up where I grew up, more countryside, etc., so in about another 2 years. I'm 7.5 months pregnant, about as emotional as ever. His family is huge on Thanksgiving. We've only been together for one and it was a nightmarish. First, I couldn't really eat much since everything had meat in it, although that's weirdly common here, and they poked fun of my accent the entire time. I've spoken to him and them, said I don't appreciate the jabs but got ignored. It's gotten even worse during pregnancy. I offered to bring food so I can eat and got told not to be difficult. I asked him to ask if they'd cook something, but once again got called difficult and fussy. The teasing's actually gotten worse during pregnancy. I've said to them I'd be fine staying here and living here in permanent housing, but my boyfriend, the one I'm apparently moving against his will according to comments, is insistent we move back to my home. I don't want to go this year, but as we're planning on moving back to my home in 2 years, my partner says that I should make sacrifices like he is. I'm just refusing. It's not important to me as it is to him, and obviously he's upset. Claims I've not tried to settle here, etc., and that his family's been welcoming and that it's important to him. Maybe I haven't tried to settle. I love the heat because we don't get that at home half the time, but I miss the community that my area offered. I did say that we do roasts every Sunday, which is basically the same thing, but better, which was a joke. and that I don't feel, while pregnant, like spending the day being poked fun of and not even being able to eat. Am I the jerk? Best of luck to OP in their relationship because they seem to be downplaying all the concerns OP has. I think they're not the jerk. The family keeps poking fun of them, won't consider their dietary preferences, calls them difficult and laughs at them. Gee, I wonder why you don't want to go. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not telling my ex the gender of our baby? I personally don't want to know the gender of my baby, as I don't think it matters. My ex was previously uninterested in our baby and me, and made it clear he was only going to fulfill his financial obligations to our baby without playing a fatherly role. Since his family's found out, I suddenly have his full attention, and so does our baby. His family's been asking me if I know the baby's gender yet, and they haven't been subtle about letting me know that they'd like me to find out. I've told them I don't want to know, but now my ex is demanding I find out. He told me he wants to know if I'm giving him a son, and has even tried to bribe me to find out for him. The last time he asked me, I told him he would find out once the baby is born, but he told me he wasn't going to wait that long and he had as much right as me to know our baby's gender. He thinks I'm going to let him come to my next appointment so he can find out, but I'm going to reschedule it instead. I think this is a really interesting discussion to be had, where it's very easy to find out what the gender of your baby is, but I think it comes down to women's bodily autonomy. What are you going to do? Try to force her to get an ultrasound? Force the doctors to look for the gender and then tell you that answer when they don't consent to even finding out that information? Our next story is, would I be the jerk if I send my daughter to fat camp? I got in a huge argument with my ex-husband about this. My 14-year-old daughter Abby just hit 210 pounds. This started about a year and a half ago when me and my ex's divorce was finalized. Growing up, Abby was always an average weight until we went on 50-50 custody. When we were together, I would do the cooking and shopping. We ate a pretty good diet, with some junk food thrown in. The divorce was kind of messy, but we sent the kids to therapy and it was doable. Abby started gaining weight when we went 50-50. At the beginning, I thought it was gaining weight before a growth spurt, but that wasn't the case. At my house, she was eating okay, but at her father's, it's all junk food. He doesn't cook, and to make it worse, he lives by, if it's on your plate, you eat it. So in short, he's giving her way too big portions of crap. I've talked to him so many times. I've tried to let her serve her own food amount instead of him loading up her plate. He will not budge. I got Abby into sports, which she enjoys for the most part, but it's not enough to stop the weight gain. I went to the doctor and nutritionist, and it comes down to her basically eating 3 times the calories at her father's place. So, since Abby likes soccer, I found an overnight camp from Friday night to Sunday night, the days that he usually has Abby. Abby seemed on board with the idea, and this way her dad won't be feeding her or even really seeing her for the next couple of months. I informed him of the camp and that Abby wants to do it. It was a big argument that he circled around to her weight. He accused me of sending her to fat camp. So, am I the jerk? Considering A, it is great for her health, and B, the kid wants to do it, you're not the jerk. And if the father keeps fighting on this, I think this is something worth bringing up to CPS or the courts. I'm not sure what the ideal way to handle this is, but clearly the father's not caring for her health, specifically when they're visiting him, and they're not even making an effort. Our next story is, am I the jerk for canceling my ex-boyfriend's plane ticket, leaving him homeless and unable to get to his family? A brief history. I met my now ex-boyfriend while doing volunteer work. Frankly, he's not been the nicest to me. He's just nice enough, just often enough to have had convinced me that he loved me. It's easier to see in retrospect. A few weeks before this incident, I booked both of us plane tickets to Germany. He needs to go there to stay with family, as he doesn't have anywhere to live now that his current lease is up. The plan was for him to fly one way and for me to go with him for a short stay and then return home by myself. We were supposed to leave today. Now on to what happened. In between his lease ending and flying abroad, X has been staying at a friend's house in a more rural town, and I was invited to visit while his friend was away. We got to the house and my ex started to make dinner for us. We were joking back and forth, being affectionate, and then, in one moment, he flipped. I'd gone to hug him when he wanted to peel potatoes, and he just started yelling. I honestly cannot come up with a bigger reason for him losing his temper aside from that hug. It was so out of the blue. And I'll admit, in that moment, I had a panic attack. My distress only served to escalate his anger. He told me to get out, that there was a bus stop down the street, and that I'd better hope to get there in time. I gathered my things and left, and thankfully did manage to catch a bus. After that initial period of shock, I realized I could never go back to him. I definitely couldn't go to a foreign country with him. I went to the airline's website to cancel my flights, and there was his booking too. I canceled it in an impulsive, numb moment. I didn't even get a refund because it's an economy airline. A few days ago, he texted me as though nothing had happened, asking for his flight details. I replied that there was no flight, that of course I wasn't going to pay to go to Germany with him after what happened. He sent a long reply saying that I knew he had nowhere else to go, that I knew he was struggling with money, and that I'd effectively made him homeless, and he hopes I'm pleased with myself. I honestly didn't know what to say in return, but luckily I haven't heard from him since. I don't know if he's been able to get a flight himself, and a tiny part of me does worry for him. Am I the jerk? P.S. I paid for both of our tickets with my own money. We never discussed this explicitly, but I just assumed he would pay me back at some point. Since it's become quite clear that that was never going to happen, this may or may not contribute to my am I the jerk verdict. I'm not sure. I think OP's not the jerk, and I think OP did the absolute right thing here. I mean, out of nowhere, this guy like a troublesome dog just flipped and tried to bite your face off. I say cut them off, block them, don't look back, sorry. Our next story is, am I the jerk for asking my fiancé to wear a different dress to a work event? For background, my fiancé, 30-year-old cis female, works as an executive at a big company and gets to work from home in leggings and crop tops. She's regularly stating that she loves that about her job, that she can do dyed hair, tattoos, etc., and that they don't care. She also comes from generational wealth. She's also white, comes from plantation money. I do not. Trans 29. I came from poverty and trailer trash and worked my way up to become a professor at a nice private college. I'm Latinx. I love my job. I can wear dyed hair and tattoos and piercings too, but I dress professionally. There was a nice work event to celebrate the fall quarter. The president of the college was there. It was in an art gallery downtown. Nice band, fancy cocktails. We were allowed to bring a guest. I was nervous as an out trans guy. I regularly face a lot of microaggressions in the workplace, something my fiancé knows and makes jokes about me being the token diversity hire. My fiancé picked out 2 dresses the night before and asked me what I thought. I picked the one that was flattering but not skin tight, nicer material, and hugged her body in more appropriate areas. She got upset, cried because I don't accept her as she is. The next day comes and I'm putting on my suit and tie. As I walk into the bathroom, I see her putting on the tight, less nice dress. We got into an argument. She put on the dress I picked. She didn't talk to me the whole night, period. She looked beautiful, but later she said I was controlling, that she felt rejected for who she is. I found out she told her friends, who now think I'm a controlling, toxic fiancé. Am I the jerk? I think OP's not the jerk because this isn't some open invitation party that they're both going to. This is a place where there's kind of an expected dress code and was all about making impressions for OP. I feel like there's sometimes just a time and a place for certain outfits. This wasn't some like, no, you can never wear that, that's too promiscuous or whatever. It was just that for this event, for the impressions that it was going to make, it probably wouldn't have been appropriate. Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to let my daughter invite her bio dad to her birthday and threatening to cancel it? I'm a mother of a 16, soon 17, daughter, Kelly. Her bio dad left when she was 4. It's complicated, but despite him being away, he still sent money or had his family help from time to time. I still struggled a lot raising her until I met my now husband, Christopher. Christopher's like a dad to Kelly. He's the only father figure she had. However, I found out that she's reconnected with her bio dad through his family, his mother, which I wasn't happy about, but I didn't make a fuss about it. Then she started mentioning him often and going to visit him while canceling plans to hang out with us, etc. Her justification is that her dad is sick and might be, I say might because she's a child and may not know what it meant, terminal. She sees him at his friend's house where he's staying now. Christopher and I were planning her 17th birthday party at our house. Kelly told me that she'd like to have her bio dad come over to celebrate since he may not be able to be around next year. Christopher said no immediately. He said he won't let that man come into his house, which made Kelly cry, saying that we were robbing her of a last chance to make memories with her dad after finally finding him again. I told her that I don't feel comfortable having him come to the house and be in the same room as him. Her stepsister said that both me and Christopher are overreacting and that Kelly wants her dad to take part in her birthday so badly. Christopher left the house, and I snapped at Kelly and threatened to cancel the whole thing. Later, when we calmed down, I suggested that she goes to celebrate with him, but she said her friends and their parents won't be able to attend. She also said that he can't throw her the party since he's sick. We had another argument, and she started ignoring me and Christopher while staying in her room. She's saying she won't forgive me if I let her dad miss what could be her last birthday with him. Am I being unreasonable, or is she? This is an incredibly tough situation. I think OP's not the jerk for not wanting that person around and not openly inviting them into their house, but I think it would be better in the long run to let him come around, especially if he's terminal. Also, I'm sure an almost 17-year-old knows what terminal means. I just think the situation is a little bit bigger than OP and the bio dad's relationship. It's just about trying to make sure that you do right by your kid and not creating a situation where your kid might resent you for a long time at least. That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for pointing out that my brother lives a very privileged life? I'm 45-year-old male. My older brother, 51-year-old male, lives with me. He's never really been good at life. He's had a few jobs here and there, but mostly just stuff like Walmart, McDonald's, and he delivered pizzas for about a month. He's never held down a job for more than 60 days. He dropped out of high school and never bothered to get a GED, let alone any college or trade school. He mostly just sits in his room drinking my booze, smoking my pot, and eating my food while he plays whatever JRPG he's currently obsessed with. I don't mind this. I truly don't. I did well in life, and my wife invested our money very well. So we're comfortable. I have more than enough resources to support him fully for the rest of our lives, and I intend to do so. He's not taking food out of my kids' mouths. He's not cutting into their college funds. It's literally extra money that I would just be squirreling away if I didn't spend it on him. Last night at dinner, my wife told me that her brother lost his job. He worked for a company that recently had massive layoffs, so it was due to no fault of his own, and asked me if we could float him some cash for bills and stuff while he finds a new job. I told her to have him just send me an estimate of how much he needs to cover 6 months, and that was that, or so I thought. My brother proceeded to head over to Facebook and post a rant about how people need to be more self-reliant and not ask for handouts they didn't earn. He didn't mention my brother-in-law by name, but it was pretty clear that that's what triggered his rant. I commented on his post, and I asked him how living off of me for the past 9 years was self-reliant. I told him that he is in an incredibly privileged position, because not everyone has a millionaire brother to pay all their bills for them. I also asked how the allowance I give him every week is not a handout. Anyway, a bunch of his friends from his video game started clowning on him in the comments. Apparently, he tells people online that he's an investment banker. He deleted the post and hasn't come out of his room since. There's an ensuite bathroom, don't worry. My wife says it was screwed up for me to call them out publicly like that, and I could have been more respectful about it. And my aunt is furious with me for airing the family laundry, so I kind of think that I might be the jerk here. Not for what I said, but for the fact that I said it publicly. But at the same time, I don't feel like the jerk, because his rant was public too. I think if you're going to publicly throw some crap around, be prepared for the crap to be flung right back at you. That's just common sense, which I don't know how much this 51-year-old guy has at this point. I mean, I almost bet this guy's got some level of brain rot just having 9 years of hanging around, sitting around playing JRPGs all day. Listen, if I was in that situation every day and I'm happy living that life and I'm just comfortable existing, I would never do anything to upset my brother. They're carrying them through life for the rest of their life. It's pretty bold to start acting like you've got much of a say to just throw harsh opinions around like that regardless. Just play your games and enjoy your easy, simple, coasting life. Am I the jerk for crashing my wife's birthday party and taking her home? My wife turned 30 this week. I'm 26-year-old male. We've always had a strong relationship and I love her so much. My wife has a best friend from childhood, Jimmy, 28-year-old male. I didn't know him that well, but this year we've gotten to know each other and have gotten close. He's my best bud and like an older brother to me in a lot of ways. My wife goes all out for my birthday parties and I love them. She's more of a stoic introvert. So I thought it would be nice to throw her a surprise 30th birthday with just her and me and make it a special event. I wanted to make her a gift she would love. Jimmy's an incredible artist, and for the past 2 months I've been taking lessons from them. My wife was curious why I was spending so much time away from home with Jimmy, but I made vague excuses because I couldn't tell her I was making a gift for her. She made a couple of comments but never seemed upset. I told her a week before her birthday that I'd made plans with Jimmy. I have a job with flexible hours, so it's not uncommon for me to do it. She wasn't upset or anything. When her birthday came, it was all I could do not to say anything. When she left for work, I put my plan in action. I decorated the place, I brought out the cake, I learned from YouTube and stored it at our friend's house. I got a dozen bouquets of flowers, I got her a few other gifts too. She was supposed to come home at 5:30, but she didn't. I waited hours for her, but she didn't come home. I called Jimmy and he said he hadn't seen her. I called her and she didn't pick up. I checked her location and she was at a restaurant. I went to the restaurant and she was there with her friends. They were eating a birthday cake and she had presents. I never met these friends of hers before. I think they're from her work. She seemed sad. She wasn't smiling or energetic. I wanted to take her home and show her my gift so she would be happy. I came over to her and told her she had to come home. We grabbed her things and left, and on the Uber back, she didn't say anything. At home, she started crying. She's been sleeping on the couch and she avoids me. My wife hasn't talked to Jimmy either. I told my mom and she called me a jerk. I don't know why. Am I the jerk? OP is the jerk because they didn't do any of this surprise party planning right where they would ensure she would be there at the right time, and they made everything look like they were just completely blowing their wife off and maybe even forgot that their birthday was even on that date. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not these people are jerks, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for not wanting to go to my brother's wedding because my stepson isn't invited? I, male 28, have been with my fiancée, female 30, for a year and a half. I have a stepson, 4, that I adore and treat as my own. My older brother's wedding is soon. I was intending on going, but after I found out that my stepson wasn't invited, we started having issues. My brother explained that it's the nature of the wedding they chose, which is child-free. But my fiancée was upset that this rule was forced on family as well. She got into arguments with my brother and his fiancée and ended up deciding not to go to the wedding. As a result, I called my brother and told him I no longer wanted to come after what happened. He began arguing, saying my fiancé is the one being unreasonable and now has convinced me to miss his wedding. I told him that this is just me supporting my family after the way he and his fiancée treated them. His fiancée said they don't owe us anything and that this is a wedding rule that applied to everyone. I said, fine then, I'm not coming. My brother is pissed. My parents are calling me unreasonable for being willing to miss my only sibling's wedding and basically let a woman I've only known for a year and a half drive a wedge between us. They said if I go through with this, then I might lose my brother, who's my support and comfort forever, and so much damage and hurt will come out of this. I stopped responding to them, but members of extended family are saying that me and my fiancé are creating the problem, trying to control my brother's wedding. They, as people throwing the wedding, can have any wedding they want to decide, and a child-free wedding is not an uncommon circumstance, whether or not it applies to direct family or not. I think OP is actually enabling some attempted manipulation from his fiancé. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not making my son apologize to his mother-in-law after an argument? I, male 41, am married to my wife, female 37. I have 2 kids from my previous marriage, boy 15 and girl 13. I'm Jewish, as was my first wife before she passed. My current wife is not. We have no kids together. My kids have always gotten along with their stepmom and her family fairly well, until recently. Thanksgiving with my wife's family is a huge affair, and it's the only chance a lot of the family has to see each other during the year. My kids and I don't eat pork, but there's always options for us, or we bring something we specifically can eat, like vegetarian lasagna. Wednesday night I had dinner with my wife's parents at their place. I should mention that my wife is not very personally religious, although she attends services with her parents monthly. My parents-in-law are very, very conservative-style evangelicals. We mostly don't talk about our religious difference, although I once had to stop my mother-in-law from encouraging my daughter to be baptized. Everything was fine, until the end of the meal when my mother-in-law crossed her arms and said, "See, we told you nothing bad would happen." I asked her what she meant. My mother-in-law said she had mixed bacon into one of the dishes, a casserole, to prove a point to us. I tried to ask very calmly why she would do something like that. My mother-in-law said it was to show that there was no point in following the Old Testament law anymore. I asked my father-in-law if he knew what she had done, and he said yes. He seemed more uncomfortable, but he talked a bit about how Christ came to free us from the Jewish law and that they wanted to show us how we could be freed from the law as well. He had worked as a pastor in the past. By this time, my daughter was crying and left the room. My wife got up and followed her. My son's been growing more observant as he gets older. He's more observant than me or my daughter. He flipped out. He screamed at my parent-in-laws that they were terrible people, called my mother-in-law some very nasty names, and said he never wanted to come back. My father-in-law started shouting back, and my mother-in-law started crying. I told my kids to get in the car, and then told my wife we were leaving. She told me she would stay at her parents' so she could help with Thanksgiving prep the next morning. I was texting my wife on TG, and she told me my son is not welcome to come until he apologizes for the things he called my mother-in-law. I told her that's ridiculous, but she's siding with her parents. I told my kids we would not be attending Thanksgiving. Instead, we ordered Chinese and watched movies. My son was fine with it, but I could tell my daughter was down. She missed out on seeing a lot of friends she has in my wife's family. My wife is still at her parents' as of now. I should mention that I too am very angry at what happened, and what I feel is the disrespect shown to me and especially my kids. I'm torn on whether to encourage my son to apologize, contingent on a mutual apology to us. Am I the jerk? I think a mutual apology here doesn't solve anything. I think a mutual apology is just giving them a pass for the awful things they did. The son would never have said any of those things if they didn't slip stuff into your food that you personally do not want to eat, that you did not give your consent to eat. Honestly, I would say double down. I don't think a mutual apology is the answer here. I think they need to apologize first. Don't give them an out for what they did. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my aunt just because her daughter is her rainbow baby doesn't mean she should act like a brat? So as most people know, Thanksgiving was recent for everyone in the US. It was also my, female 16, birthday. So besides Thanksgiving, we also had a whole birthday moment. My family celebrates Thanksgiving at my grandparents' house. One person being there is my aunt, female 30, and her daughter / my cousin, female 8. My aunt had 4 miscarriages before her daughter was born. So when my cousin was born, my aunt made it a big deal, which is fine. But it's led her to spoil her daughter so much, and now she acts like a brat because of it. If my cousin doesn't get her way, she'll throw a fit. My cousin is also the last born of this generation of the family, so my aunt has made it a point that her daughter is the princess of the family and she should get all this attention because she's special. My whole family just lets her think that way because they know how hard it was for her to have those miscarriages, so her daughter is special to her. So as I was saying, yesterday was also a birthday celebration for me besides Thanksgiving. While most of my extended family members gave me money or gift cards for my birthday, my grandparents always give me actual gifts, so they were sitting out for me. My cousin started throwing a fit that nobody got a gift for her. so my aunt asked if my cousin could help me open my gifts. I agreed. Well, she got mad that it was nothing she liked and ended up throwing and breaking a new makeup plate I got. My aunt said that she didn't mean to, but did agree to buy me a replacement one. Then it was cake time and everyone started singing me happy birthday. Cousin yelled no and blew out the candles as we were trying to move the cake further from her. She completely smashed my cake. By then I was upset. It's hard enough having a birthday on a holiday, but now I'm having it ruined by a bratty kid. My aunt started saying cousin didn't mean to and that she was still little, so I said she should know better. I get your daughter is special to you because of the miscarriages you had, but she isn't a baby anymore. Instead, she's a brat. So stop using the she's your special little rainbow baby as an excuse and learn to accept that you're raising a spoiled brat. My aunt instantly started crying and went upstairs. A few family members, not my parents or grandparents, called me a jerk and said I didn't have to be rude about it and that I completely ruined the holiday. Before OP went and completely ruined the holiday, how about anybody here take notice that their daughter completely ruined OP's birthday, which, to be fair, isn't even fair to OP to have their birthday lumped into the Thanksgiving like this, regardless of when their birthday is. They should already understand that OP is already conceding like having a special solo birthday event, let alone having this 8-year-old stomp all over it. I just gotta say happy belated birthday to OP, and that they're definitely not the jerk in my eyes. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not gifting my nephew as nice a gift as his cousins because his parents are poor? Every Christmas, my husband C and I get gifts for all the kids in the family. C is a stay-at-home dad with no income. We're financially comfortable, not rich because I'm a college graduate. C and his family are minority immigrants who mostly work labor jobs. This year, while holiday shopping, there were 6 kids total we needed to buy for. The gift we bought for D, 19, was above $100. We spend the most on him because we got custody of him at 15 and raised him. D will also buy gifts for my husband, our child, and I, around $40 each. There's a sibling group of kids, J who's 10, A who's 6, and M who's 2, who I bought gifts for. These gifts were all around $30 to $35 each. Their parents are both hardworking and always buy our daughter gifts for Christmas. There's also an only child, U, who's 6, who we spend $45 on because his parents buy us gifts as well, and we'll be buying his parents around $50 each. This brings us to L, 12 years old. L and his family immigrated here to the US a few months ago. L doesn't have an easy life as he doesn't speak English and shares one bedroom with both his parents. L's mom doesn't work, so his dad works overtime, but they're hardly making it. While shopping, I picked out a really cheap $15 Lego set for L. I didn't want to get him nothing because that seems cruel. I know his parents don't have the money to give gifts back, so I don't plan to spend more. My husband wanted to add another few gifts to L's gift so that we're spending around the same on each kid. I told him I'd rather not because L's parents can't reciprocate it. My husband tells me we can afford more and L already has a tough year. He says that the extra $30 for a better gift would just be wasted on fast food. He says L would see his cousin's gifts and know that they're better gifts. I told my husband that L's mom should get a job and give him a nice Christmas then like J, A, and M's family. I also reminded him of how I'll be paying for and cooking food for the Christmas party that everyone will be attending. And L and his family probably won't bring anything because they can't afford to. C looked hurt, as if I was insinuating L didn't deserve a nice Christmas because his parents are poor. Every kid deserves a nice Christmas. I just don't think it's necessary to spend as much as the people who will actually be giving us gifts. C tells me that I don't know what it's like to be a poor immigrant and have people treat you the way I'm treating L. C wasn't angry but looked hurt. I know C was brought to the US as a child too, and had a similar life to L. For the sake of peace, I bought the extra gifts for L, so a total of around $35 for him. C still won't talk to me and I can't understand why. I spent the extra money and obviously don't expect anything else in return. Am I the jerk? I mean, it's not as severe as Scrooge, but I sure do think that it sounds like OP's trying to put themselves in the running for the next person for the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future to pay a visit to. It's such weird, classist, Scrooge-like behavior to say, oh, because your parents are poor and they can't get me anything in return, you deserve less. When OP says that every kid deserves a good Christmas, do they actually mean every kid that can afford it? Just really confusing and appalling behavior here. It tells you plenty about the kind of person that OP is, when on Christmas, what they give is solely dependent on what they're getting back from that person. On this Christmas day, what will I get out of it is OP's mantra here. Our next story is, am I the jerk for leaving my daughter on Thanksgiving dinner and telling her mom she's insecure? I had my daughter when I was really young, and I've raised her since she was little when her mom gave her up. She's 14. Her mom reached out to me asking for her to come with her, and with my daughter's okay, she went over. Second time she's met her. They invited me as well, but I wasn't interested in going, but my daughter didn't want to go alone. When we did go at first, everyone was inviting. Her grandparents welcomed my daughter quickly and started asking her questions, and at first it was okay. It's relevant to know that my kid isn't fat. She's not even overweight, period. There was a lot of people there, so there was a lot of food to eat. My daughter was making a plate when her mom came over, specifically to tell her to not put too many rolls on her plate. My reaction was, maybe they just needed to save some for the guests, and I had no idea what it was about. The second time was when her mom walked over again and made her put back food, told her that she didn't really need to eat so much and made her plate, with actually very little and 3 out of the 11 things they had made. I pulled her aside and asked her if there was a reason she was doing this so I could inform my daughter, but she said no, of course not, they made plenty, and she was just helping her because there was too much on the plate. I said that she usually eats it, and if wasted food was an issue, we will always take whatever she didn't eat home, and she eats it then. I was trying to be the most open-minded, and that this was just tone deaf. When we sat down, my daughter ate everything on her plate, and her mom stopped her and said, no, don't go grab any more because she'll get more bloated. I told her to go get some if she'll finish it, and told her mom to not say stuff like that to my daughter, and don't make her try to worry about her weight. That's not a concern to anyone but her doctor. The last straw was when I went to the bathroom and came out to see her trying to take my daughter's plate away and throw it out, telling her that she didn't need any more food and to just listen when someone says stop eating. I walked over and grabbed both of our jackets and said, okay, let's go. Thanked everyone for the food. Her mom got mad that I was leaving and said that I was being overdramatic about this. I told my daughter to go to the car, and when she left, I said that she was so freaking ridiculous to tell that to a 14-year-old, and just because she was overweight and just because she was overweight doesn't give her any darn right to project her insecurities onto my kid. She ignored that and said that I can't get it into my head that it's our kid. I said that the fact that she just ignored me telling her she's hurting her kid shows me she isn't ready to have her in her life. I'm told that leaving like that was wrong, and bringing up her weight was a low blow, and that I should have just clarified to my daughter it was okay to eat it. I don't think OP's in the wrong here. OP already had clarified I think twice that it was okay to eat that stuff. Is it OP's responsibility to constantly bat the mom away like there's some kind of fruit fly? At what point does it become justifiable to say, hey, you're being an absolute jerk? Whatever the group mind is thinking, OP is definitely not the jerk here, and I appreciate what OP's doing because it's very easy for people that age to hear all these things about eating negatively and weight and develop into something serious. Our next story is, am I the jerk for going home because of my sister's dog being at Thanksgiving? I'll, female 33, preface this with, I don't like dogs. My sister, female 29, has a dog that she says her world revolves around, which is fine. She can do her thing. I just have an issue when it affects me. It's a breed that sheds a lot, like regularly has dog hair on her clothes. I don't eat food at or from my sister's house. I've found dog hair in her cooking before, so I gently pass on her dishes. Privately, I've told my mom that I don't like her dog around food, and I won't eat my sister's dishes. We were supposed to have Thanksgiving at my parents' house. Neither my sister or I live at our parents' anymore. I arrive a little early to offer to help, and see my sister was already there. Well, I walk in and see my sister's dog is at my mom's house. I've never been at my mom's house when my sister's dog is there. Well, I also found out my sister had been there all day helping my mom cook. Apparently, she had offered a few days earlier and my mom accepted. I didn't know this was happening. Next thing I know, the dog is trotting through the kitchen. This whole situation was too much, and I told them I wouldn't be eating this food. They ask why. I tell them why. My sister says I'm blowing things out of proportion. Mentions lots of people eat food prepared where dogs are nearby. I tell her I'm not one of those people. I just decide to go home. I leave the pies I made and ended up ordering Chinese. When dinner was supposed to happen, my phone was blowing up and I was told I should have just dealt with it by multiple family members. So, am I the jerk? I've been around dogs all my life. You can always try your best to try to make sure the dogs are A, properly groomed, your house is well taken care of, but at the same time, inevitably, you're going to find a dog hair here or there, or, it'll float through the air and land in the food. I think the real problem here is it sounds like OP's sister isn't taking very good care of the dog or cleanliness. I mean, to find dog hairs in the food time and time again, there's a lack of caring I think that goes into that. So I don't blame OP. Our next story is, would I be the jerk if I didn't make my son give away his Xbox? I, female 30s, have a son Owen, male 16. 3 years ago, my husband and I bought Owen an Xbox One for Christmas. Owen's recently gotten bored of the games on his Xbox and hasn't played it at all for the past 5 months. He's been talking about selling it and buying a Nintendo Switch instead. He would pay the difference and buy games with his own money. Owen has a Saturday job. Here's the problem. Owen mentioned it in front of my younger brother Jason, male 30s. Now Jason's been messaging me, talking about how his son Alex, male 13, would love to have an Xbox One, and said that Owen should gift it to him. Jason and his wife aren't doing too well financially, and there's no way they could afford to buy Alex an Xbox themselves. I told Jason that would be very nice, but said that Owen plans to sell the Xbox so that he can buy himself a Nintendo Switch. Jason said that I should make Owen gift it to his cousin instead. I argued that it's Owen's Xbox, and he can do what he wants with it. Jason told me that me and my husband bought the Xbox, so that's not an excuse, and that I'm just trying to avoid doing the right thing. He accused me of being selfish and having a teenage attitude, and said I should make Owen give away his Xbox. He went off about how I need to teach my son that life is about giving, not just receiving, and that I'd set a bad example if I didn't. I know I'm within my rights to just tell Jason to forget about it or piss off, but I just want to know if that would make me a jerk. I haven't talked about it to Owen yet because I don't want him to feel pressured to feel a certain way about it. There's a lot of emotional manipulation going on here. I think OP is not the jerk, and if Owen wants to sell their Xbox and get a Nintendo Switch, I think you should encourage that because I think it's a nice skill to pick up on learning how to sell your own stuff. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not actively hiding a pizza and not warning my nephew and niece about the pizza when they had some? So I'd been looking after my nephew and niece, my sister's 2 children. The nephew is 10 years old and the niece is 9. Their school had to close unexpectedly for 2 days due to maintenance problems, and they spent both of those days under my supervision whilst she was at work. My sister and the kid's dad split up, and he now lives and works in a different country. My sister is vegan and quite a militant one and all, always badgering my mom and I about eating non-vegan food in our own homes, even when she isn't there, returning toys I've bought my nephew and niece for birthdays and Christmas, etc. She'll give her children the choice on whether or not to become fully vegan when they're a little bit older. Note, her children are not 100% vegan yet. She's alright with non-vegan food being given to them when they go around friends' houses and friends' birthday parties. Day 1, my sister had packed a vegan lunch for the kids to eat whilst at mine, which the children absolutely detested. They both didn't eat all of the food, and my sister blamed me over it. I think they'd seen some chocolate that I had and got a bit upset. I know that the children have been picked on at school over the vegan foods that their mom packs for them, and they want to try things that the other children have. Day 2, the sister was in a rush and couldn't make her kids anything. Lunchtime comes around, and I'm emptying my freezer before I do a big food shop. So I put 2 pizzas on, a barbecue chicken pizza and a cheese pizza. The plan was to give them the cheese pizza. If I give my sister non-vegan food but vegetarian suitable food, she doesn't get as upset. And I would pick at the barbecue chicken pizza. The barbecue chicken pizza was quite big, and not offer it to the kids. But if the kids did have a few slices of that pizza, then I wouldn't stop them. They have been and will be given the choice. Both of the kids did end up taking a couple of slices of the barbecue chicken pizza. Sister asks what the kids had eaten. The kids seemed quite chipper when she came to collect them. They told her what they'd eaten, and she asks to see me inside the house. She blows her lid at me that the kids should have known about the dangers of meat on barbecue chicken pizza first, and that they should have had controlled permission before having a slice, whatever that means. I mentioned that the kids aren't 100% vegan and have similar foods to the barbecue chicken pizza when they go to friends' birthday parties. She storms off saying that I was rude about leaving the pizza open and indirectly calls me a danger on the family group chat, as if I was letting her kids stick forks and plug sockets rather than letting them eat a bit of pizza. She's the youngest, so a few family members take her side by default. They're not vegan either, and they're giving me jip for it. What do you think? I think it's a bit of a dilemma because I think as a parent, they do have a right to say what the kids can and can't have. But man, these kids sound like they hate anything that she's trying to provide for them, and they don't want to stick to that vegan diet. I think the bottom line, considering the kids aren't even 100% vegan, and they're not subscribing to that, the sister should kind of maybe just shut up and accept that they got 2 free days of childcare. Maybe next time, unless the mom makes sure to provide all the food that these kids are going to eat, OP should turn down looking after the kids. I'm assuming for free. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend that she acted inappropriately and that she should apologize to my ex? I, male 29, have a girlfriend Lily, female 26. Lily and I have been dating for around 8 months. I have a daughter Alice, female 7, whose mother is my ex-fiancée Rachel, female 29. Our relationship ended for multiple complicated reasons, which I won't get into. It mainly boiled down to us simply not being romantically compatible. Rachel and I are on good terms. We had a few petty disagreements in the beginning, but we've been able to co-parent really well. Lily never really had an issue with me being a single dad, and she interacts really well with Alice. However, recently, I think Lily really overstepped and acted inappropriately. Last week, Alice's school had a fair. There were games, prizes, food, and music. Alice is in her school's dance club, which was doing a performance towards the end of the fair. I talked to Rachel about the event, and we agreed that I would take Alice to the fair, and Rachel would meet up with us at the event, then take Alice back to her home. Lily insisted on accompanying me and Alice to the fair, and I didn't see a reason as to why she couldn't come along. However, Rachel didn't meet us when she agreed to. I tried to call her a few times, but she wasn't answering. Lily seemed a lot more annoyed about it than I was, and went on about how Rachel shouldn't be late and that she needs to prioritize her time better. I told Lily she's probably just stuck in traffic or something and that it's no big deal. Rachel ended up being 2 hours late and didn't arrive until after the dance performance. She said that her boss made her stay behind past the time she was supposed to finish and was really apologetic. Rachel's normally not late. I will admit that Alice was pretty disappointed, but these things happen. Lily was fuming angry and confronted Rachel in front of Alice. She accused Rachel of not caring about her child and being hopelessly disorganized. Lily told Rachel that her own mother was like her and that she hates her for it. I tried to calm Lily down and prevent an argument, but Rachel started yelling at Lily and said that she has no right to criticize her and that she's not Alice's parent. They got into a screaming match and caused a huge scene. Alice started crying and Rachel eventually took Alice to her car and left. I took Lily home, but I was really angry with her. I talked to Lily the next day when she was more calm and told her that she majorly overstepped her bounds and that she owes Rachel an apology. Lily seemed surprised that I'd say that and said that Rachel was blatantly in the wrong and that she should have been more organized and prioritized her child. I told Lily that that doesn't matter and that she behaved inappropriately. Lily was really mad that I didn't take her side and has been very cold towards me. I think this is honestly a simple thing of crap happens. It's not like Rachel intentionally tried to set something up where her boss is going to hold her back. I wouldn't assume that Rachel was intentionally pretending to stay back to miss this event. Not only do I agree with Rachel that it's not her place to point that stuff out, doing so in front of the kid too, really inappropriate. Am I the jerk for telling my wife it's her own fault for not getting invited on a group trip? Me, male 32, and my wife, female 31, have been together for about 6 years. We get along wonderfully and through everything have never had any major fights except for one thing. I personally feel like my wife makes no effort to get along with my friends. Now, to give context, all of my friends and I went to the same university for undergrad. 3 guys and 3 girls that are married. My wife is the only one that didn't have this common trait of attending undergrad between the 8 of us, which is really not a big deal if you ask me. Early on in our relationship, my friends would always try and be friendly to her and talk to her when we would mutually hang out. My wife was cordial, but you could tell that she was uncomfortable. I would speak with her about this and she would always comment that she was an outsider to all of us. This always made me personally slightly miffed because I felt that my friends always made an effort to include her and make sure that she wasn't singled out. Throughout the years, my wife would attend events with me but would seem distant, and would sometimes skip group events to hang with her college friends if she had something else planned. My friends never said anything but were nice and treated her kindly. Well, this week, I got a group text from my friends about planning a group vacation to somewhere next year. I quickly noticed that my wife wasn't on the group text and asked about it. I got a call from one of my friends who basically said that they didn't invite my wife because 1, based on all the previous interactions, they didn't think she would want to attend. 2, even if she did want to attend, her attitude is crappy and they don't want it to ruin the vacation. I thanked my friend for his honesty and told him I'd think about it. And while I love my wife, I figured she more than likely wouldn't want to go on a vacation with them. So I told my wife about the trip and she asked about the details. I told her that while I was invited, she wasn't, and it wasn't because of anything she did, but because they thought she wouldn't want to attend. Well, this statement just seemed to be about how she's an outsider. She said that because of the history us 7 had together, she had no chance of ever being a part of the group. She then went on a rant about how my friends are awful people and that she deserved to be invited even if she didn't want to be there because she's my wife. I sat there and listened to her vent, and then finally I calmly told her that it was pretty much her own fault for not being invited because she had taken such a hostile stance with them from the get-go. She became a self-fulfilling prophecy about being an outsider. That's paraphrasing, but something along those lines. She left the house and went to her mother's. I haven't spoken to her in several days, despite texts and phone calls to try and talk to her. I probably should have been more diplomatic about what I said, but I do feel my friends have been treated unfairly. Am I the jerk? I think the main thing here is the wife never seemed too disrespectful. They just didn't participate in a lot of the friend group events. They're your wife, you're going on vacation, they should have been invited. Also, hi, I'm Stephen, and if you love getting to decide whether or not somebody was just being a huge jerk, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for locking my children out of my room and refusing to look after them? I, 27-year-old female, have 3 children, 8-year-old male, 6-year-old male, and 3-year-old female. My partner and I both work, but since my hours are more flexible, I've picked up most of the childcare, such as dropping the children off at school and childminder, picking them up, taking them to the park, doing homework, etc., as well as 50% housework, so meals, ironing, etc. My partner will help after a little nagging, as well as usually taking the children out to the park at the weekend. Last week, I didn't feel good, but come Saturday, I felt awful, dizzy headaches, hot flashes, etc., and was just so tired, so I asked my partner to take care of the children for that day. My 3-year-old's clingy, she gets upset whenever I leave the room, as well as going through a phase where apparently the only word she knows is no. My partner was in and out asking for me to handle it. My 6-year-old has a habit of asking me to do something or where something is whilst not even considering asking their dad. Partner came in and asked if I'd help settle my youngest as she was requesting me. I refused and may have snapped that he's her dad and to leave me alone. I'll admit my final fuse was when my 6-year-old came in crying because apparently my 8-year-old was looking at him funny, so I told him to ask his dad, and when he left, I locked the door. My head was killing me, especially around a crying child. My husband woke me up very upset. Apparently at nap time, my youngest wouldn't settle without me. My middle child was upset because he thought he'd upset me. My partner was like, I know you're sick, but just offering cuddles to the children would have been nice, and I needed help. You know youngest gets upset without you, and apparently you're the only one who calms her down. It's not that he's not around and that she's unsettled, it's just natural for children to pick one person, and the doctors have said she'll grow out of it. My partner's upset, although even a week later, I'm still feeling dizzy with hot flashes. He just wants an apology, but I don't feel like I need to. Am I the jerk? Personally, I feel like OP's not the jerk here, and I feel like there's a major communication issue here. OP just seems to be expressing that they're not on the same page with their partner, and their partner doesn't seem to be taking the time to talk anything out. I mean, I know it's hard to set aside time to talk in a situation like that with young kids, but God forbid, even like in bed at night, take 5, 10, 15 minutes to just talk about game plan, where you are, helping each other out, and then immediately conk out. But I think OP's not the jerk personally. What do you guys think? Our next story is, am I the jerk for reorganizing my library while pregnant and telling my in-laws my husband wouldn't help me? I've recently had an almost obsessive urge to reorganize everything in my home. My library is one of the places I felt needed to be changed ASAP. So I asked my husband multiple times if he would help me, as my shelves are pretty high up and I have a lot of books that are heavy to move. He kept telling me that he would help me later as he was busy. It felt like later was never coming. So I finally decided to just do it myself while my husband was working. My in-laws came to visit us and they walked in on me grabbing books from the higher shelves. They thought what I was doing was dangerous and that I could have fallen. My husband also freaked out and kept telling me to get down and saying I shouldn't be carrying heavy things. My father-in-law asked me why I hadn't asked somebody else to move my books for me, and I told him I did ask my husband, but he wouldn't help me. He did try to correct them, saying that he would help me later, but his parents told him off for not doing it for me. He thinks I made him look bad to his parents and is upset that I didn't correct them and because I didn't wait for him to reorganize my library. We keep arguing because I told him that he didn't help and that I didn't want his help anymore and that I would finish the library myself. Maybe it's the pregnancy, but I think OP is the jerk and they're not understanding that they're kind of being a little me here. They were just looking out for OP's safety and they did offer to give you a rain check and help you out with it later. Whether or not the library does get reorganized or not, I think it is for the greater good that OP stays off ladders and lifting heavy things while pregnant. Basically, you didn't even give the husband a chance to help you. Our next story is, am I the jerk for canceling the plans for Thanksgiving after my parents called my brother's baby their first grandchild? I, 32-year-old female, have been with my wife Ava, 34-year-old female, for 8 years now, but we've been married for 5. She was a single mom of 3 kids when we started dating. She had 2 daughters, now 10 and 12, and a son, now 16. I've watched these kids grow up. I've read the bedtime stories, done bath time, the first days of school, PTA meetings, all of it. I very much consider them to be my kids, and they've been calling me mom for almost 6 years now. My brother Ivan, 28-year-old male, just had a baby girl with his fiancée Sarah, 27-year-old female. I love my niece and my kids adore their cousin. My kids have been the only grandchildren on my side of the family since Ava and I got together. And there's never been a moment where the kids and my wife were treated like they didn't belong. My brother is their uncle. My mom and dad are their nana and pop. The kids see my family as their family. And I always thought that my family felt the same way about them. The kids and I were over at my brother's house just hanging out, and my parents ended up dropping by with gifts for my niece. Ivan laughed when he saw the toys and told her mom and dad that they were going to end up spoiling her rotten. My mom said since my niece is their first grandchild, of course they have to spoil her. My kids were sitting in the living room with all of us, and my youngest daughter looked hurt when she realized what my mother said. My son and my 12-year-old didn't fully react to it, but I could tell it bothered the both of them too. Sarah spoke up and said, "Oh, you mean first grandbaby, not first grandchild." My dad shook his head and replied that my niece was their first grandchild. I didn't want my kids to keep sitting there and listening to that, so I handed my son my keys and told him to wait in the car with his sisters. When they were gone, I asked my parents why the heck they would say that my kids weren't their grandchildren, and my mom said they couldn't be their grandchildren because they weren't really my children. My wife and I were going to be hosting Thanksgiving at our house this year, but I told my parents that if they didn't view my kids as their family, then they could just host a meal at their own house with their real family while I spent the holiday with mine. I left before they could say anything else to me, and my wife and I have reiterated to the children that they'll always be my kids and I'll always be their other mom, regardless of our DNA. My brother is pissed at me now because he thinks I reacted too harshly and that I should try and see where my parents are coming from. My mom texted saying that she and my dad love the kids, but they still aren't their grandchildren, and she hopes that we can come to understand that because she doesn't want this to ruin my niece's first Thanksgiving. I haven't replied back. I meant what I said, but I'm worried that maybe I'm reacting too harshly. This would be one thing if OP's wife was just like the mother of those children and they still had another parent and they were just OP's stepchildren, but OP embraced these kids at young ages and OP even clarified that they adopted these kids. So regardless of where the kids came from, whether they came from a foster house or a single mother, OP adopted them. They are their kids. The grandparents are the jerks here. OP's definitely not. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my ex-husband's son that my daughter is not his sister? My ex-husband's son Caden was born during the course of our marriage, and I was in a vulnerable space, so it didn't make sense for me to leave. Caden's mother got institutionalized a few months after he was born, and my ex got full custody. Now, I wasn't a mom to him at all, just a responsible adult who cooked meals for him, kept him safe, and looked after him when he was sick. I finally left my situation when Caden was 3, and I still babysit Caden sometimes, because I'm the only one he feels comfortable with other than his own daddy. Now, after struggling with infertility for years, I had a surprise baby with my friend Will. It was a shock for the both of us, but we decided to embrace the gift and co-parent together. Will is my best friend, and his son Aiden, 5 years old, is a doting big brother to my daughter, now 7 months old. The other day, I was babysitting Caden for a few hours when the kids, Caden and Aiden, got into a fight over my daughter. Caden told Aiden that my daughter was his sister and not Aiden's. I gently explained to him that even though he wasn't my daughter's big brother, he could definitely be her buddy. He was inconsolable. I had to tell him that Aiden was indeed her big brother. My ex is furious with me for telling him that my daughter isn't his sister. He thinks that my comments were harsh and inappropriate for a 5-year-old. I think that my comments are okay. I don't want to confuse a little boy and create expectations and disappointments down the line. Am I the jerk? It might be painful to see this kid really upset over the situation, but I think OP did the right thing. They're not sugarcoating it or keeping up some kind of false expectation for the kid. And it has nothing to do with liking them less or preferential treatment. It's just making sure they understand the way things are. This next story is, am I the jerk for serving my guests disgusting food? I was at the butcher looking for some cheap meat to use for tacos at my housewarming party. My wife got me an awesome new smoker and I wanted to try it out. The butcher mentioned that he had some beef tongue and beef cheeks. I went weak in the knees. I love those cuts of beef, so much flavor, and proper barbacoa is made from that. So I picked it up. I prepared it the way I was taught by my grandfather. It was awesome. Smoking it makes it so tender. I made tortillas from scratch as well. We had our party and everyone enjoyed the food until my wife's brother's girlfriend asked for the recipe. I declined because it was my family recipe and I don't like to give away recipes. I have in the past and I end up getting crapped on because it doesn't taste as good and I must have sabotaged them on purpose. No, Madison, I didn't sabotage you. You used cinnamon powder in your chili instead of a couple cinnamon sticks like I said. My wife told me to please play nice and share, so I wrote out the recipe for the girl. She immediately starts dry heaving like she's going to hurl. My brother-in-law comes over to see what's going on. She screams that I served dog food for supper. So everyone starts asking what she means, and she starts waving the recipe around and saying that beef cheeks and tongues are what she buys for dog snacks. No one else complains. They all say that she's being ridiculous and that the meal was great. She's left there crying and being comforted by my brother-in-law. Now she's flaming me on Facebook, calling me names and saying that just because I ate peasant food growing up is no reason to feed it to others. I also feel kind of guilty because I thought I was doing a nice thing, making authentic food, but I guess I might be a jerk for serving cuts of meat that Americans don't think is fit for human consumption. I've watched plenty of MasterChef to know that cuts of meat that are unconventional to most people, like beef tongue and beef cheek, can make some pretty awesome dishes. And also, let's be fair, lobster used to be considered a poor man's food. In the early 1800s, they used to serve it to like prisoners, and people who had next to nothing would eat it. Now how is lobster looked at? Our next story is, am I the jerk for how I treated my husband's ex? My husband and I have been married a year. We're both 31. Before we met, he had a very long-term girlfriend of 6 years, starting freshman year of college and into their 20s. He said they broke up because their passion fizzled. They didn't hook up the entire last year that they dated. She's fine. I've met her a few times. She lives out of state, but we've been at mutual weddings and events. No jealousy. She's now married herself. It's all fine. Except, she makes comments about their relationship that annoy me from time to time. Not overly flagrant stuff, but still like mentioning their apartment or some trip they went on or some shirt she bought him once or whatever. It's not obnoxious, but I get a slight territorial vibe from her. Like she was his first love. She still knows him super well, that kind of thing. So she stayed with us last weekend when she was in town for a baby shower, and she and I hung out a lot while my husband worked. She kind of did it again, like saying, "Isn't it so funny how mellow he gets after he's drinking?" or other random stuff like before. But then she actually said she thinks it's so funny how he leaves shampoo in his hair so long when he showers. He does, but that's irrelevant. I feel like the underlying message was, she's seen him in the shower. I don't think I'm imagining this, but that last comment really bugged me. So much so that later that night after I'd been stewing, I told her that her comment about shampoo was so funny. It's true that he does that, but anytime I'm with him when he's showering, there's other stuff on his mind. She said, "Oh, really?" in a sort of surprised tone. And I said, "Yeah, I mean, if I'm in there with him, we're screwing," in a breezy LOL tone. She acted completely offended. She was cold the rest of the weekend and texted me Monday that she thought that wasn't cool what I said. I haven't apologized. Am I the jerk? Honestly, I don't really think that what she said justified what OP did, but I also feel like her reaction to what OP said was over the top too, so maybe there was some truth to it. I also feel like even though OP said a bit much, it wasn't like enough to justify that action where they go, "Oh my god," and stop talking to you and just freeze you out. How dare you say that you do things with your husband in the shower? Our next story is, am I the jerk for not moving out of my table at a restaurant so a couple could have their wedding shoot? I'll make this short. I was having dinner with my best friend in a very popular restaurant in our city. It's one of those pink/full of flowers restaurants, those aesthetic ones. While we were sitting there dining and minding our business, a couple dressed as bride and groom comes in. They were having their day after photo shoot around downtown apparently, and also stopped at the restaurant to take pics because of the aesthetic. Now, I didn't particularly mind their presence. They did their thing. When I started getting annoyed though was when the photographer asked us to move seats for around 15 minutes so he could photograph the couple at the booth we were sitting at because it's one of the most famous parts of the restaurant. We kindly declined because we were already dining, having a table full of meals, plus the restaurant was packed, so only a couple of really small tables were empty for us to sit. The photographer kept insisting that we should pause for a while and do this favor to the newlyweds. We kept declining. Then the couple stepped in and both started begging us about how special it is that they take pictures there. My friend and I said we understand it might be special, but this is a restaurant. They don't own the restaurant and they can't just have people move seats just like that. The groom ended up yelling and asking for the manager to step in and move us. The manager declined since he wasn't getting any share for having the restaurant used as a photo shoot place, and also defended us, saying that he won't move paying customers so that the couple can occupy the place for free. The bride was tearing up and said how we were heartless for ruining this for her and making her upset one day after her wedding. They eventually left. My friend and I felt no shame for what we did, but when we told our other friends, they said we lacked compassion and it was just a nice gesture, so we should have done so to make someone happy. Am I the jerk? Honestly, I don't think they're the jerk, but I feel like if I was in that situation, it might suck, but I probably would just to let them have their moment. But I think you, as a customer, during normal business hours, have just about a God-given right to just continue to sit there and enjoy your meal. I'm honestly impressed that they would allow these people to even do this in a restaurant known for aesthetic without making a proper reservation or something. This next story is, am I the jerk for suggesting that my parents move out of the house? I'm the oldest of my parents' 8 children, all 3 to 16 years old. I'm 23. My biological father died 2 months after I was born, and my father, stepfather, has been present in my life since I was 3 years old. The house I currently live in belonged to my paternal grandfather, who, when he died, as he had no wife and children, my biological father was an only child, made me the only heir of his things. He passed away when I was 15. As the house was quite big, 7-bedroom and 4-bath, my parents talked to me about our family moving there, as it would be cheaper and accommodate everyone. The only thing I wanted was the master suite for myself, and it actually became my bedroom. Currently, my mother is 6 months pregnant again. I work and earn a good salary. I don't pay the house bills, but I help with the groceries. This month, I started having complaints from my parents saying that I should help more with my younger brothers. I always argue that I'm not their father and that it's their responsibility, as they're so financially tight, and started to charge me to pay some bills because they weren't able to, and I started to pay some, but not as they wanted. I had my limit when they suggested that I move into their room as they would need space for the new baby, and they pay most of the bills, so they should have the biggest room. I told them they can pay most of the bills, but they don't pay a dime on a huge house, and it's only in my name, and that if they want more space for their 9th child, I suggest they move to another house, because I am owner of the house and I won't give up my comfort because they don't stop having children. They called me an ungrateful son and that they raised me to be empathetic and kind, but I'm showing myself to be a cold and extremely selfish person who threatens their own parents to take them out of the house for not agreeing with a suggestion. I talked to my maternal grandmother. She said that she understands my side, but that I may have been very hard on them, especially since they were my parents. They're not talking to me properly, by the way. Am I the jerk? Not in the US. Considering the fact that they have, 8 other kids, they're incredibly lucky that they just have to pay the bills for the house. There is legitimately no greater luxury than having a house that is completely paid off and not having a house bill. 100% OP could kick all 10 of them out of that house and clearly afford it on their own. They're essentially trying to take over OP's property and push some of the responsibilities on OP's shoulders, which never was OP's responsibility to begin with. I think they're not the jerk. If you're tight on money, condoms are pretty cheap. Our next story is, am I the jerk defending my husband after a prank went horribly wrong? My husband Jaden, 26, loves jokes and pranks and stuff. I'll admit I'm not one for them and find most of them dumb, but our daughter Lucy, 5, loves them. They basically do a bunch of stupid pranks to each other. And to be fair, Jaden does keep it harmless. Last month we got some realistic looking spider toys with other decorations. Since we got them, Jaden and Lucy have basically taken turns putting them around the house to scare each other or me. I honestly find it annoying, but the two of them love it. Lucy does usually get scared, but when she realizes what it is, she laughs and finds it funny or tells her dad off. It's actually adorable when she tells him off though, and Jaden always pretends he's scared even when she gives it away beforehand by giggling and watching him. So about 2 weeks ago, Jaden set it to fall on her when she opened her toy box in the playroom. Lucy didn't open it and apparently he forgot it. Later that week, we had my family over, including my brother Leon and my nieces, Tara, 3, and Zoe, 6. Zoe was bitten badly by a spider when she was younger, even had to go to the hospital. Since then, she's deathly afraid of them. I would go as far as to call it a phobia. The kids went to play, and the spiders fell on them. Zoe completely freaked out and just melted down. We came down and saw what happened. Jaden did apologize and tried to cheer her up, but Leon was furious. He basically accused us of doing it on purpose, that we should know better, and just calling us jerks. We did apologize and explain that it wasn't meant for Zoe, but my brother didn't listen to him at all. Leon left early with my sister-in-law and nieces, and the whole night was kind of ruined. I've tried to talk to him after, but Leon's still pretty pissed with us. It's been a week and he's still acting like we tried to murder Zoe. I've tried explaining again that it was an accident and a mistake, but he thinks basically it's too convenient a mistake. And that if it is, Jaden's still a jerk for being so immature, and that I'm a jerk for defending him. So now he basically refuses to see us unless Jaden is banned, which is ridiculous. I do feel bad that it went so wrong, and I understand that it was a horrible mistake. But it wasn't meant to happen. It was meant to be for Lucy, who likes these stupid pranks. I think Leon's overreacting, and he thinks I just don't really care about my niece. I agree with OP that I think Leon is overreacting. The fact of the matter is it was never planned for Zoe. It was an honest mistake where you were trying to have fun with your kid, and you kind of forgot about it. Just be grateful that they were having fun with plastic spiders and not going full Addams Family. They'd probably have dart traps set up in that house. This next story is, would I be the jerk to ask someone to return a baby gift I want a more expensive version of? I'm having my first child in a couple of weeks, and my in-laws asked what I was missing to buy for the baby. I sent a link to a playpen that I wanted to get the baby, which is $125 on sale from $180. It's the color I want, with music and vibration features. It has multiple pockets and a big space for Pampers, bottles, etc. Plus, it has near perfect reviews. Yesterday, my sister-in-law showed me the one they got me, which is $90, but in a color I don't like, with a smaller area to put baby things and no outside pocket. It was like they didn't put in the effort to order the one I wanted and ordered the first one they saw at Target. Personally, I feel awkward with these things and just said thank you and it's cute, but I truly don't want it. Would I be the jerk to request they return it and get the one I asked for and sent the link to? This is one of those situations where you take the gift, you return it, and you buy the more expensive version and you just eat the cost of the difference. I think OP would be the jerk to involve them in any of the return process. That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for getting mad that my friend didn't invite me to her wedding? I, 32-year-old female, have known this girl, we'll call her Amy, also 32-year-old female, since first grade. We were best friends all through school until we went to different colleges in the same city. At 23, we both started dating. I happened to introduce her to her boyfriend. We'll call him Mike. At the time, everything was fine, but Mike started showing some jerk behaviors, and Amy tried to end it and couldn't because he used some manipulative tactics that worked perfectly. All of our common friends told Amy they didn't like Mike for her, that she deserved better, but she stayed with him. Our fallout happened about 5 years ago when some friends told me they found Mike on a dating app. Nobody wanted to tell Amy, so I did because if that happened to me, I would like to know. The thing is, instead of believing her friend, she told Mike what I told her, and from that day on, he hated my guts, and without words, he let me know, with nasty stares, etc. Fast forward to current events, Amy got engaged, and I also got engaged, and my friends threw me a bachelorette party, where I decided on the list, 6 friends, that didn't include Amy, whom I haven't really talked to or seen for over 2 years, and apparently she was pissed that she wasn't invited. I got married at City Hall with only our families and best friends, and that was it. Though at a moment we thought of doing something else of about 50 people where she wasn't going to be invited. Only my best friend knew that. Now it's time for her wedding, which isn't going to be small, I assume at least 150 people, and I wasn't invited. It was hurtful considering there's a long relationship that had some rocky places, but still. Talking to my best friend, she blames me saying I started it by not inviting her to my bachelorette, where we could have mended things, and because I was thinking about doing a small gathering and not inviting her, which I told her didn't matter because that never happened. It was only a thought. So am I the jerk for getting mad I wasn't invited, or is Amy right? I think OP is the jerk because considering the entire history, why would they even A, want to try to maintain a friendship or an acquaintanceship with this person? And B, if this is a situation where they didn't believe OP when they were trying to help out initially 5 years ago, and they've been on rocky terms ever since then, why is OP so pressed about going to their wedding anyways? Am I the jerk for calling every morning? My son is a 20-month-old toddler. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. I work 6 days a week, and I'm usually gone for 12 hours a day. I always check in on my son remotely via our nursery cam app, and he's always awake in the mornings around 8 o'clock. He has a great sleep routine. Our wind down time starts at the same time every evening. We clean up toys, read a book. When I lay him down, he's still awake. He falls asleep on his own and sleeps all night for at least 12 hours. It's usually after 9 o'clock before I have a chance to check the camera. This morning when I checked, it was 9:12 and some mornings are closer to 10. Every time I look though, he's awake in the dark and standing in his crib just waiting. When I see this, I immediately turn on the brightest nightlight the camera has and speak to him through the camera app. I always tell him good morning and I love him, and he usually laughs and says "da-da." Then I leave the app and call my wife to wake her up. I usually have to call 3 to 4 times, and when she finally answers, it's obvious that she just woke up and only because I called. I tell her that our son is awake waiting for her and that she needs to get up to start their day. The morning while on the phone, I asked her if she was going to get him after using the bathroom, and she said no. She was going to the kitchen to prepare their breakfast and then she'd get them. I asked her to get him after the bathroom so he could go to the kitchen with her, and she flipped out. She told me it pisses her off that I call every morning to tell her how to be a mom and that she has a routine. I retorted with, well, your routine sucks because he's been awake for an hour and you'd still be asleep if I hadn't called. It just bothers me that he has to wait so long. He needs a diaper change. He's probably thirsty, hungry, and just wants to play. Am I wrong though? Do I need to stop? Please be completely honest with your answers. Thanks. So this is a very nuanced thing, but I think OP might be the jerk here, solely because I feel like maybe the kid is getting conditioned to the dad talking to them and calling for them. Because OP said that when the kid does make a fuss, the mom does get up and takes care of them. So it's not like the mother is being willfully neglectful. If the kid is awake and wants attention, if they make a fuss, the mom will come. So I think the calls are unnecessary and might be conditioning the kid to not even have to worry about making a fuss. Maybe that's why they're waiting. Let me know what you guys think. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy getting to decide whether or not people are the jerk, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for not inviting my pregnant sister-in-law to Thanksgiving? I, 33-year-old female, hosted Thanksgiving this year. Every year it rotates between me, my sister, and my brother's homes. It's a pretty big gathering that normally involves my siblings, their partners, my sister's kids, and our parents. This year, my brother James, 35-year-old male, and his wife Becky, 31-year-old female, are having their first child. The baby's due in spring. We have a traditional Thanksgiving meal, watch the parade, play games as a family, couple drinks together in the evening, the usual stuff. Same kind of thing every year. This year, a couple of weeks back, I get what is basically a list of demands from Becky and our family group chat. She wants to come, but her pregnancy means some things need to be adjusted. Her rules were no poultry, as the smell makes her sick, no alcohol, as the smell makes her sick and she can't join in. The food needs to be served early, as she needs time to nap during the time it's normally served. And she doesn't want to play the games, as she tires easily, so can we just listen to music and talk in the evening instead? I was really upset by this. Firstly, none of us are vegetarian, and so I don't really know how to prepare a turkey alternative. But secondly, I'd already ordered the turkey, and it seems like a waste. And to not be able to drink, eat when we want to, or even play our games in the evening, just feels so unreasonable when 9 of us won't get to celebrate in the way we'd like to. In the family chat, I replied and said that I would make her a non-poultry meal and I would make sure people don't drink at the table, but I wouldn't ban poultry or alcohol from the house. And I certainly wouldn't not be playing our games. Particularly as my niece and nephew are now old enough to join in and really loved it last year. Both James and Becky said I was being unreasonable and that she's pregnant, so I need to be more understanding. My mom joined in and said that it's not hard to accommodate, but I was really annoyed by this point. I told Becky she was uninvited if she can't accept any compromise whatsoever. James called me separately to say I'm excluding her and ruining their Thanksgiving, and she can't help how she feels during pregnancy. I said I wasn't excluding her, and she's welcome if she can accept that Thanksgiving has to work for everyone else too. In the end, neither Becky or James came over. It was a weird day without them, and I'm sad they weren't there, but I feel like I wasn't unreasonable. I do want to make amends, but am I the jerk? It might be one thing if they were the ones hosting Thanksgiving, but they literally took basically the default concept of what a normal Thanksgiving is, said you cannot do any of that, and only under those conditions will I come and participate. No turkey, no drinks, no games. On Thanksgiving. That's like all that Thanksgiving is. You want to come over and eat salads and talk with some gentle jazz music in the background? That just sounds like a Friday night get-together, not Thanksgiving. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not congratulating my sister-in-law on her planned pregnancy and telling her she's making a mistake instead? My brother works as a car rental agent, and his salary is not livable at all. His wife is a stay-at-home mom for their 4-year-old. So he's the sole provider, and he's been receiving a fixed sum from both my mom and other sister to keep things afloat. I also helped a few times when I could. Some time ago, my sister-in-law told me that she wanted another child because she didn't want their son to be an only child and asked me what I think. I advised her against it and told her to either wait till my brother gets promoted or till she gets a job. I told her it would be realistically impossible to provide for another child when you're barely coasting by, and that she was still young, 27 years old. I also told my brother the same thing. About 3 weeks ago, my brother calls me all happy and tells me his wife is pregnant. I told him great, I wish you good luck, and soon hang up. I never called my sister-in-law to congratulate her, nor went over to their place for the baby shower. I told them I was busy. Yesterday, we had dinner at our parents' house, and I inevitably met my sister-in-law. She told me, "You know I'm pregnant," with an excited tone. I told her, "Yeah, I know. That's great. I wish you good luck." She then said, "So? That's it?" I asked her what she meant, and she said, "Aren't you happy for us?" I told her my feelings are irrelevant here, and their decision is up to them. She told me of course they matter, and begged me to please honestly tell her what I think. So I told her I frankly think you're making a mistake, and this innocent child is going to suffer the consequences of your selfishness. You're not ready to take care for another little life when you can't even pay your bills. How long do you think my mom and sister are gonna support you? She interrupted me and said, "What the heck? That's none of your freaking business. I only asked you out of politeness, but you didn't really hold back at all." I told her, "You're the one who told me to be honest." She said, "I told you to be honest with me, not be a douche." Then she called me a jerk and went off to complain to my brother. I didn't want to entangle with them and grabbed my purse and left. Sometime later, my mom calls me fuming and tells me I had no right to make any comment whatsoever. She said I should have congratulated them properly and left it at that. That even if she was the one who asked for my opinion, I should have known better than to hurt her with those words. I think my words might have been pretty hurtful and I went too far. Am I the jerk? I think OP's not the jerk because very clearly OP was feeling some type of way about it. They didn't have the social awareness to pick up on it, and then to OP's face asked you to be open and honest with them. What did they expect? Honestly, I agree with OP. This is all a very selfish act. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my dad I've had enough and his wife's grief will not change my mind? My mom died when I, 17-year-old male, was a baby, so I don't remember her, but her family was a big presence in my life, and I vacationed with them every summer, 2020 excluded. Dad met his wife when I was 7. They were together for 6 months when she told me that she loved me, after meeting her 3 other times before that. and that she could not wait to give me another mom. I told her I didn't want another mom. She was sad, but said she understood. They married a few months after that, and then when I was 9, she and my dad sat me down and told me that she wanted to adopt me and that she loved me so much and that her dream was to be my mom. I told them I still didn't think of her as my mom. She asked if I loved her enough to try, to give it a shot, and we could wait on the adoption until I was ready. I said I didn't want to. She then said to do it because I loved her. Dad said there was no woman more deserving. I told them I didn't love her enough to let her be my mom, and she cried. My dad told me he didn't know why I was lying, but therapy would help me see I loved her. I did go to therapy. I didn't change my mind on letting her be my mom / being adopted by her, so they tried to have a baby of their own. She wasn't able to get pregnant, but they abandoned the idea of her getting her motherhood dreams out of me, which was good. But she couldn't get pregnant, and so IVF was their next step. I'm not sure on all the details, but they only got enough for one try, and they waited and prepped her so the pregnancy would stick. She made it to 14 of 15 weeks, and then she miscarried 3 weeks ago. It was bad. She was broken, and she ended up staying in the hospital so they could help her. My dad decided that now I need to give her what she wants. That 10 years of knowing her and 9-ish years of her being his wife means that she's been my mom whether I like it or not, and I need to start showing her that I love and care about her. He told me the adoption would mean the world to her and would be the biggest help while she grieves. I told him I had enough, and his wife's grief was not enough for me to let her adopt me. I told him I didn't think of her as my mom, I didn't love her, I was not a toy that could fill her motherhood desire. I told him I'm a real person, his son, and mom's son, and while I don't know her, you can't just ask someone to be adopted to give another person their dream. He told me he was disappointed in me and expected me to be more compassionate and loving to her after all this time. Am I the jerk? I think OP's not the jerk. This is how they felt their entire lives, and personally I strongly believe that as long as you're aware enough to make a decision like that, how you feel and what you approve of is paramount to anything else. Our next story is, am I the jerk for showing favoritism toward my grandkids? My son married his high school girlfriend when he was 19. I told him I don't approve of his choice for 2 reasons. 1, he's too young. 2, we never liked his girlfriend, so I'll never help him with anything. They have 2 kids, Jonah, male 17, and Laura, female 16. When Laura was born, my son begged me for help because they couldn't afford childcare for 2 kids, even though they both work full-time, and none of them can become a stay-at-home parent because they need the money. Even though I told them I won't help, I decided to help anyway because of my grandkids. I hired a nanny for them. The problem is that whenever we were at their home, noticed that his wife only takes care of Jonah and leaves Laura completely to the nanny. I never saw her play with Laura or anything while she was always holding Jonah and playing with him. Once, I told her it won't kill her to touch her daughter sometimes, which caused a huge fight between us, and I fired the nanny and told them the only help I'll give is that I'll babysit Laura for them and pay for everything she needs, but I won't help with anything else. My wife and I took care of Laura more than her own parents did. My sweet daughter turned 16 a few months ago. I bought a car for her. She earned some of the money by helping me with my job, and I paid for the rest. Jonah's turning 18 in a few months, and my son asked me to help buy a car for him. I told him I'm sorry, but I won't do that because I made it clear that I'll only help with Laura's expenses. He accused me of showing favoritism and called me a jerk, being a terrible grandfather for giving one child the luxury life, but not doing anything for the other one. I told him I'm doing this because he and his wife are terrible parents to Laura, so someone needs to favor her. I think both sides are flawed here. I think both sides show clear favoritism, and I don't think anybody can be in the right in that kind of scenario. Definitely, I think both sides are just flat out in the wrong here. Our next story is, am I the jerk for losing my temper at a massage? I've had a long few weeks at work, preparing for a huge pitch that happened today. I'm exhausted and I just need to de-stress. As a treat, I bought a 2-hour full-body massage for myself and my girlfriend full whale music and everything. The massage was great apart from the fact that my girlfriend's masseuse insisted on engaging in constant conversation with my girlfriend. The masseuse spoke Chinese but speaks English well enough to know what I'm saying, as does my girlfriend, trilingual. At first, I gave a look of annoyance to my girlfriend, indicating I was looking for peace and quiet. 10 minutes later, I said, "Babe, the most relaxing bit of this is definitely you two chatting loudly." Slightly passive-aggressive, I admit, but I was clearly annoyed and was trying to avoid confrontation. Girlfriend gave me a snarky reply, but I thought the point was made. Third time around, still loads of noise, and I let out a loud sigh of annoyance. By this point, my girlfriend has stopped responding, but the masseuse is still chatting away. Fourth time, I say, "Babe, please." Quiet reigns for 10 or so minutes, but then it reverts to normal. Fifth time rolls around and I've lost my patience. I snap and say to the masseuse, "If you two want to disturb something that just wants to hibernate, can you please both freak off to the zoo?" This did not go well. Everything went awkwardly quiet until the end of the massage, but girlfriend went ape poop after we left. Said I was rude, the masseuse was just happy someone she massaged was Chinese, etc. My argument was that I booked this to relax and de-stress, and it was ruined by this constant chatting, in Chinese, a language I don't speak, and I gave 5 clear signals that I wasn't happy. She was still mad when we got home. I may be the jerk for overreacting, but this was my reward for myself, and I brought girlfriend along who, in my opinion, contributed to it being ruined. So Reddit, am I the jerk? If OP wanted this to go exactly how OP wanted, then they shouldn't have treated their girlfriend to go along with them, because that just transforms it away from a reward for themselves to a group experience. Also, from the outset, OP jumped into this with passive aggression, not even just being blunt and being honest, being like, "When I paid for this, I just imagined relaxing in silence." I feel like most people, right or wrong, would definitely get pretty upset after that whole zoo comment being hurled at them. Our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to go through with a donation to a children's hospital? Recently, a children's hospital in our city held a fundraising dinner and auction to raise money to upgrade their cancer wing. My wife works as an administrator for the hospital group that owns the children's hospital, but doesn't work for the children's hospital. She told me their CEO expected all of the administrators to go mingle with the donors and asked if I wanted to come. I wanted to, but declined because I had a dinner meeting the same night. That night came, and we went to our separate functions. I got home first and went straight to bed because I was tired from my full day. The next day when we woke up, everything was normal as we talked about our night. Somewhere in the middle of our conversation, my wife told me that we donated $5,000 to the children's hospital. I was stunned. I asked her to repeat it just to make sure I heard her correctly. I didn't remember us talking about any donations, much less a $5,000 donation. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. I told my wife, while it looks like we can afford the donation right now, our financials took a big hit with this economy and looks to be taking a bigger hit next year. The company I work for has been holding high-level meetings about our clients not renewing contracts because they're anticipating their own slowdown. There's a slim but real chance that I might lose my job next year if the economy in our business doesn't pick up. This isn't time to be giving away $5,000. She argued that she had already made the donation, so there's nothing we can do about it. I went to check the account and saw it hasn't been withdrawn. So I went to the bank and opened another account, then transferred my portion of the account, leaving only her money. I transferred my direct deposits into the new account, leaving our joint account with only her money and direct deposit. She doesn't have much more than $5,000, so once the children's hospital donation hits that account, she won't have enough money left to buy a cup of coffee. I told her what I did and that she made the donation without talking to me, so it's coming out of her money, not mine. She said I can't do that because both of our names are on the donation brick. They put the donor's name on a brick, then use those bricks to build part of the new wing, and she can't back out of it without looking foolish to the rest of the executive team. I told her she should have thought of that before giving away money without talking to me first. She argued it's for a good cause, to which I argued making sure we're not homeless next year is a better cause. I'm standing my ground, but she's gotten her family involved. Her father called me to have a man-to-man talk about me being a better man by supporting my wife and helping children. They're making me out to be some kind of monster because we can afford it right now. Am I a monster? Children's hospital or not, married for a long time or not, you don't donate $5,000 without asking your partner if it's okay spending that money from your joint account. I definitely think OP's not the jerk, and I wish them luck because this is a tricky thing. Our next story is, am I the jerk for defending my brother? I'm actually also surprised I'm defending my brother, but here goes. So my older brother had issues. He was essentially one of those bratty and evil kids you read stories about. He got older and into drugs and other illegal stuff. Our parents had enough and kicked him out after he became uncontrollable. It was mostly done for me as I was still pretty young. We didn't hear from or about him until he was in his early 20s. Turns out he was married, had a good job, and a kid on the way. Now he has 3 kids and is still happily married to a very lovely woman. We see each other on Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, and a week during the summer, but he mostly comes so our parents can see the kids. He usually doesn't say anything and keeps to himself. At first I was afraid, confused, and resentful for a lot of things, but I've since forgiven him. He's not a bad guy, honestly never was, he just needed help. My parents hosted Thanksgiving and it was pretty normal, the usual. All of a sudden, there's a sound of glass breaking. My nephew accidentally dropped a plate while trying to help my mom set up. My mom loses it. She starts yelling at him. The poor kid starts sobbing. He's only 8 and runs to his mom. My brother obviously asks our mom what that was about and that it was just an accident, and my mom immediately goes, "Oh, shut up. Maybe if I yelled at you more, you wouldn't have made everyone's life a living heck." My brother didn't even react. He and his wife just gathered their kids and left. My mom immediately started to cry once she realized he wasn't coming back and said that she didn't deserve this and that he has no right to keep her away from her grandkids. I told her that he actually does have the right to do that, especially since she lost it on his innocent 8-year-old son. My mom started to cry even harder and said that she didn't need my opinion and that she can't believe I'm on his side after everything he did and everything she did to protect me from his addiction, etc. "I kicked my child out of the house for you," is what she said. In a way, I guess she's right. I probably should have kept my mouth shut, but my brother's grown so much as a person, and it didn't feel right to hear her still blame him for the actions of his child and teenage self. Am I the jerk? I think OP's not the jerk, and honestly, I think they're very valid in what they're saying here. It was unbelievably over the top for the mom to blow up that way and use an accident like dropping a plate to let out their years of perceived frustration on them, especially in front of that kid. This next story is, am I the jerk for not downgrading the family pre-feast hike on Christmas for my son's girlfriend? Ever since I can remember, our family has always gone on a hike the morning of Christmas. We did it all through my childhood. My husband's family did it. My friends' families are similar, though for some it's just a walk, or some go into the city and do an easy 5 or 10K run. My son Porter has been dating Emily for the past 6 months. I'm happy she's going to join us. They're coming from the city about 3 hours away, so they'll be staying overnight. I've met Emily before and think she's a great match for Porter. I know there's all that hoopla about the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law dynamic, and I just have no time for any of that. If Porter likes her and she treats him with kindness, and he the same, who am I to complain? I Skyped with them on Thanksgiving, just making plans for who's bringing what for Christmas, gifts and such. I mentioned that she should remember to bring her hiking boots, but we'll have plenty of yak tracks if the trails are icy. She was visibly confused and asked what for, so I explained. She got quiet and asked if she had to. I said no, of course she doesn't have to, but we've always done this, and I was surprised Porter didn't mention it. The next day, Porter called and explained that Emily's not in great shape and would struggle with keeping up, even on one of the easier trails nearby. He said that maybe we can just do a nice short family walk in the neighborhood this year, so she feels more welcome. I said that maybe the two of them can hang back and enjoy a nice quiet morning before the festivities begin while the rest of us go for a hike. I remember being young with Porter's father and how special those early Christmas mornings always were. Plus, this will be her first time with the family, and it's going to be a lot. Porter got annoyed and said that I'm not hearing him. He said that he really thinks we need to cut the hike down or make different plans. I told him in return that this is a family tradition that goes back for years, and changing it for one person isn't fair to the rest of the family. We're at a stalemate. I even said that if they hang back for the morning, I'd be happy to go on a nice walk with Emily and Porter later in the day during a quiet moment. He said I'm still not hearing him. Am I the jerk for not being willing to downgrade the hike to a little stroll around the neighborhood? I think OP's not the jerk. I understand the desire to be included in this moment, but it is a family tradition that I don't think has to be sacrificed, and I think the compromise is seemingly judgment-free and more than fine. If they legitimately can't do the whole hike, why not go with and then stop and take a break and hang out and wait for the rest of them to make their way back? I mean, it's Christmas, right? Nobody's going to be judgmental. Our next story is, am I the jerk for taking my friend to a small operation instead of my husband? I, 30-year-old female, love my husband, 27-year-old male. He's charming, quick-witted, handsome, funny when he wants to be, and is the type of person everyone is drawn to. I was the one to ask him out, to say I love you, to kiss him, to plan our dates, to file the paperwork. He's not particularly affectionate. I think he wouldn't have proposed to me had his family not expected it. Nevertheless, I'm very happy. Recently, I went to a dermatologist about 2 growing spots on my body. It turns out that they were semi-benign tumors that could turn cancerous. I had them removed. I asked my longtime friend Amy, 30-year-old female, to be my support person, as the surgeon required someone else to take care of me. Amy is a very touchy-feely person, and we're basically sisters. I felt that I needed affection. I did the surgery on a week where my husband would be away. It went smoothly. My husband noticed the bandages yesterday and asked if I got hurt. I had to tell him the truth and told him it was a small operation. He said that it was cruel of me to ask Amy instead of him. I told him I don't want to burden him, and he got even more irritated. My parents heard about this and told me that I did the right thing, but when I told my friends, they said it was a jerk move, especially to Amy, who took a day off to help me. I don't even think OP is necessarily a jerk for taking Amy or even preferring Amy necessarily, but I do think they're the jerk for hiding this operation and this whole thing from their husband. I don't have a great sense of their relationship. OP seems weirdly insecure about asking their husband to do things, or for some reason unnecessarily guarded about what they do and don't say to him. That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for using flashcards to explain to my brother and his wife why they can't bring their rainbow baby to my wedding? My fiance, female, and I, male, are getting married. We've decided the wedding's gonna be child-free. No hate towards children, just to keep it more organized and contained. My brother Chris, male, and his wife, female, have a 3-year-old son, who everyone calls Miracle or Rainbow Baby. He came after several failed pregnancies that lasted for years. When they found out that my nephew was included in the no children rule, they tried to convince me to make an exception for him. Chris told me that his son is a miracle baby, and his presence at the wedding will bring blessings for me and my fiance. I refused and said no, the wedding is child-free. His wife kept sending my fiance pics of my nephew when he was months old. What does that mean? I told them no and to stop. My brother told me this might cause a rift in our relationship. I again said no and explained that the wedding is child-free. He asked again and pointed out how his baby is different since he's a rainbow, a miracle baby. I again said no and explained that the wedding is child-free. They brought it up when they visited at my home, and I knew they weren't going to stop, so I had made flashcards in advance with the phrase, "The wedding is child-free, period," and pulled them out and started slowly showing them the flashcards one by one in this order. The wedding, with a sticker of a bride and a groom, is child, with a sticker of a baby, free, with a sticker of a no entry sign, period, with a huge black dot sticker. They both were stunned. I asked if they get it now, and Chris had lost his crap. His wife had already grabbed her stuff and walked out. Chris called me a jerk for doing this and said that I disrespected him, his wife, and their son, who is my one and only nephew. He rushed out after we argued. My fiance saw the whole thing and thought that it was funny, but my parents and Chris are livid beyond measure. They're telling everyone about the amount of disrespect and mockery I displayed towards them, and I'm being told to fix it now. Honestly, why does what OP did here sound like something that would happen in some cartoon? Somebody's just not getting the point in some classic cartoon, so all of a sudden they hold up those signs with the wooden post, and it just has big pictures on it. They go one by one explaining the memo. I'm not gonna lie, Chris and their wife sound kind of tiring. It sounds like they're using this miracle rainbow baby thing whenever they can for whatever they can. I think they're about one step away from going to Disney and asking everybody in line to let them skip because they have a miracle rainbow baby. Am I the jerk for giving the silent treatment after my girlfriend's son spilled in my car? I got a new car earlier this year, and it's the first big item I've bought for myself. It's my baby and I take good care of it. This weekend I had to drive to town B for work. To get to town B, I have to drive through town A, which is where my girlfriend's mother is. So my girlfriend asked if I can give her, my girlfriend, and her son a ride there to visit her mother. We left yesterday, and before leaving, I reminded both her and her son of my #1 rule: no food in the car. She said whatever, agreed, and we went off. On the way, her son complains about being hungry, so we stop at a gas station, and the two of them go off to quickly grab and eat something. After about 20 minutes, they come back to the car and both hold slushies. I stop them and I tell them that they can't drink that in my car, and she says that they can't possibly finish it fast enough without making us more late, and that she wasn't even willing to do that. This resulted in a back and forth of arguing, and the ultimatum was to leave them there or to suck it up. I gave in and let them in, cautioning them to be careful. After about 30 minutes, her son drifted off and dropped the melted slushie all over the back seat. I yelled the F word and pulled over to clean it up. After cleaning it up, I got back in the driver's seat and just drove. I was bloody livid, but I knew fighting or arguing over this wouldn't solve anything. Still, I was in no mood to talk, so I just remained silent for the rest of the ride, only giving short answers when spoken to. I dropped them off at her mother's and kept driving. When I reached my lodging, I saw a message from my girlfriend calling me jerkhead for giving them the silent treatment and making her son feel like crap over an honest mistake. Am I the jerk? I think OP is not the jerk, and I hate how the girlfriend is not accepting any responsibility here. God forbid OP had one rule and it was completely disrespected and violated. Had a melted slushie dumped all over it. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy deciding whether or not these people are jerks, why not hit that subscribe button down below? Our next story is, am I the jerk for taking back control of Thanksgiving meal planning and cooking from my husband? I cook Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners every year for my husband, his family, and our kid, and have for 16 years. I put a lot of love, planning, and effort into making it a really special day. This year, between work, parenting, and everything else, I'm tired and I don't want to cook Thanksgiving. I went to him and asked if we could just go to a nice restaurant instead. To my surprise, he said he'd handle it. However, even cooking a simple Thanksgiving meal requires forethought, like getting the frozen turkey in the fridge to defrost multiple days in advance. Now is the time to pick up some items. I don't know if he knows what he's signed up for. I started asking when he was planning on doing his grocery run and what dishes he was planning to serve. He just dodged the question and said he'd handle it. He has a habit of underestimating tasks and rushing last minute. I finally was like, look, why don't we work together and start planning? He admitted he was only going to cook a simple meal of turkey breast, mashed potatoes, and broccoli. That's it. Basically, I said that's not really a special holiday dinner, and I wouldn't have agreed to that had I known that's what he meant. I said I'd be happy to work together and balance simple meals like he wants and special like I want. I suggested turkey, potatoes, packet gravy, box stuffing, pre-made mac and cheese, canned cranberry sauce, broccoli, rolls, and a store-made pie. He got really defensive and made it about him versus me, very black and white, your way or my way. His offer wasn't good enough for me. I'm just trying to get my way. When I explained no, that's not what I mean, he insisted I did. I cannot imagine family showing up and being served a very simple meal like that. It's just bad holiday hosting. Maybe coordinating a potluck would be okay, but he wasn't doing that. We already committed to hosting them. Am I the jerk? I think the thing to keep in focus is still trying to have a special Thanksgiving holiday. OP and the family going to a nice restaurant would still be a nice time, but for the husband to take over and do just the bare minimum, that's just nothing and very little effort from anybody. So I think OP's not the jerk because it's all about just trying to have a special day. Our next story is, am I the jerk for eating alone in a different room at my boyfriend's parents' house? For many years, my boyfriend's parents have had us over for brunch, lunch, or dinner. They have a nice deck with an outdoor table and chairs and use it to eat or hang out. Thing is, it has to be freezing temperatures before they'll concede and eat in the dining room. I've had to sit on that deck many times trying to eat my food while I'm shivering, even though I'm wearing layers. Last week we went over there for brunch mid-morning. The outdoor table was set with plates, etc. I had my layers on again, but I was cold. When we were outside, I noticed the thermometer read about 45 degrees Fahrenheit. The food got cold quickly, and I decided I'd had enough. I told them as nicely as I could that I was too cold. The mom turned to the dad and asked, "Well, should we pack it in?" The dad, scooping food into his mouth, said, "No, it's not too bad out here," and kept on eating. Nothing more was said, not even from my boyfriend. Everyone kept eating. So I apologized sincerely that I needed to eat inside, gathered my plate, napkins, silverware, and glass, and went into the dining room. I finished eating before they were done, and since I was warmed up, I went back to the deck while I chewed the cud and finished up. I could feel tension and no one talked to me. After we left, my boyfriend berated me in the car for being rude. I agree it's not the best thing to do, but I'd put up with this for a long time out of politeness. And I think their behavior is nutty. Sure, after years of this, I should know better than to go over there with my boyfriend if it's a cold day. I do it to be a good girlfriend and daughter-in-law. I think OP's not the jerk. If you're uncomfortable somewhere, they as good hosts should try and be thoughtful of that. I mean, I'm used to warm climates regardless, but 45 degrees is cold. That's not a temperature you just scoff at. If it's a temperature cold or hot enough that you walk outside your front door and take notice of, it's probably worth considering other people's feelings about it. Our next story is, am I the jerk for pretending not to understand a joke so that my stepsister's boyfriend would have to explain it? I, 18-year-old female, live with my dad, his wife Hannah, Hannah's daughter Grace, 20-year-old female, and our youngest brother, 8-year-old male. Grace really only comes to stay on the weekends since she's in college, and this time she brought her boyfriend Isaac, 21-year-old male, with her. I'm biracial, my dad is white, and my mom is black. Honestly, I don't look anything like my dad, so most people don't even think I'm mixed. We like to joke that I got his personality instead of his looks. People tend to say offhanded stuff to me about how I don't look the way they think I'm supposed to. I'm kind of used to it, especially since my dad ended up married to a woman that's also white, so like every time I'm with them, it obviously looks like I'm the odd one out. I'm not afraid to correct people, but sometimes that gets exhausting and I'll just play dumb instead. Grace and I had planned to get lunch together, and her boyfriend Isaac ended up coming along with us. She wants him and I to get to know each other better since she really likes him, so I figured that's why she brought him. While we were having lunch, my mom's side of the family was brought up, and then Isaac said that it must have been a shock to my dad, at least for me, to end up so dark since most mixed kids are lighter in complexion than I am. But then he said that at least I ended up with good hair, so I didn't lose out completely. Grace didn't speak up and say anything to him about it, so I pretended not to understand what he meant, and asked what was so good about my hair and what it was he thought I was losing out on anyway. He got flustered and said, "Well, you know, most girls with your skin tone have curlier hair." So then I asked why he thought my hair was good just because it wasn't that curly. He said he felt it just looked nicer. So I asked why he thought that textured hair didn't look just as nice. He kept blubbering out excuses and digging the hole even deeper for himself. And finally, Grace told me to cut it out and leave him alone. I paid for my part of lunch and left after that. I didn't tell my dad or Hannah what happened, but it's obvious enough that Grace is mad at me. My dad asked that she and I solve whatever the problem is, because he hates seeing us be so tense around each other. Grace ended up telling me that she was pissed because I made her boyfriend look like a jerk by playing dumb. I told her that I didn't have to make him look like a jerk because he already was one. but she said that I drew the problem out more than necessary and made it worse than it needed to be when I could have just told him that he screwed up. I mean, I could have done that, but I don't think it should be my job to. And plus, I feel like it was probably more effective to get him to explain his logic out loud rather than have me tell him he was being a jerk. Grace is insisting that I should have just told him point blank, and because I didn't, she thinks I'm a jerk. I think OP's not the jerk because I think they actually have a really good line of reasoning for this. Having this guy called out in a way that gets them thinking about what they said and realizing what they said is wrong and why is invaluable compared to just giving them a negative experience saying, you know what, you're a jerk. If anything, that might make them double down, but at least just getting them to explain themselves, they might realize they're kind of being a bit racist. Our next story is, am I the jerk for tricking my sister-in-law into trying keto? I, 28-year-old female, have been keto for the last 2 years. I tried it because I was always feeling bloated and crappy after eating and was struggling to lose weight. Keto really helped with my IBS and other gastro symptoms, and I've lost some weight and I'm keeping it off. My brother, 25, married my sister-in-law, 24-year-old female, last year. Sister-in-law and I have always been cordial, and she's a nice lady, but we haven't gotten close yet. I'm really close to my brother, so I see him often and usually have lunch or dinner together at least once a week. Sister-in-law eats a ton of fast food and pasta and generally unhealthy stuff, but works out a lot so they manage to stay thin. She doesn't have the most mature palate, but bro is pretty open-minded and had tried and liked keto food with me. She and my brother know I'm keto, and sister-in-law sometimes makes fun of me for it and tells me I should just eat some pasta a lot and just work out like she does. Usually it's just a few joking sort of comments every now and then, and she's not rude about it, so I've let it slide. Yesterday I invited her and my brother to my place for dinner. I asked him and sister-in-law if they had any preferences or ideas for what to have for dinner. My brother said anything was fine, and they were excited for my cooking. I made a tasty keto meal and tried to make stuff I thought sister-in-law would like too. I did bacon-wrapped sausages as a main, one of my favorites, and then a side of cauliflower rice with broccoli and bacon. They came over and my sister-in-law was acting a little strange as I brought out the food and asked jokingly where the bread was, but everything was going fine. We were partway through the meal when my brother asked what everything was. I told them and my sister-in-law got upset, saying that I tricked them with fake rice and that I was being sneaky and unreasonable and trying to force keto on her. She refused to eat with us after that and ordered some fast food takeout. I was a little offended, and then I suggested to my brother afterwards that maybe we could just do a meal, the two of us. And sister-in-law overheard and accused me of trying to force others to do keto and leaving her out. And why couldn't I just make real rice or pasta like a normal person? And that I should have known better than to make my weird food for other people. I didn't mean to offend my sister-in-law. I guess I should have known and tried to make some carb, but the food was really tasty and I didn't think I was forcing anyone. So, sanity check here. Am I the jerk? I think OP's not the jerk because they weren't misleading them in any way. They weren't like trying to present it as something else. This wasn't some bait and switch. I don't see how OP could be the jerk. Our next story is, am I the jerk for doing what I want for my daughter and not caring about how my niece and nephews will feel? I, 29-year-old male, found out that I have a 10-year-old daughter. It's a long story of how I found out, but just to be clear, yes, I'm sure she's mine. I've been trying to get to know her and she stays with me a lot. I've decided that this is the right time to introduce her to my family. I have a big family with so many siblings and nieces and nephews. They know about my daughter and some of them have met her, but some of my siblings that I'm not very close to or that live in another city haven't met her yet. My siblings and I stay the entire holiday in our parents' home, and this year, I'm taking my daughter with me. Every Christmas, my siblings make a list of gifts. The list is for all the kids in the family, and it's designed so that every kid will have the same gifts, and no one will get upset that someone else is getting a better gift. It's also designed so that all of my siblings, even the ones who don't have good jobs, can afford it. My sister sent me this year's list and told me this is what I should get for my child this year. I looked at the list and it was mostly clothes and like one toy of our choice. I told her I'm sorry, but this is my daughter's first Christmas with me, and I'm not gonna get such crappy gifts for her. I have my own list. She argued that every kid in the family is getting these gifts, and getting anything but these will make the other kids upset, and I told her I don't care. The other issue is that my siblings usually go there by train. I used to go with them, but it's a very long way and tiring, so I told her that this year I'll get plane tickets for me and kiddo, which made her more mad and she called me a jerk. She has told all my siblings, and most of them are calling me a jerk for not thinking about how their children will feel if I do this. Only 2 of my siblings are on my side, and the rest think I'm a jerk. Honestly, I think it's a bit weird and a bit sterile, is how I would want to describe it, to try and make sure every kid gets exactly the same thing pretty much. Oh boy, Billy, what shirt and 1 toy did you get? What shirt and 1 toy did you get, Susan? And what shirt and 1 toy did you get, Timmy? Spoil your kids and have a big old Christmas. At the very least, join the celebrations at their place and then have a secondary celebration where you give them a whole bunch more stuff in your own place. But it's not as fun if you can't just give it all to your kid on Christmas. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not apologizing for my dog scaring off another kid? My 7-year-old son was having a birthday party the previous weekend, and a number of his friends and schoolmates around his age came over, along with their parents. I have a male mastiff mix for context. I know people always love to exaggerate and say their dog is so loving, regardless of whatever their dog's true personality is. My dog's friendly towards my family and people he's familiar with, but he's very aloof towards strangers. He doesn't bark towards strangers, but will have a low growl if he's patted or touched without the proper introduction. So anyway, for the party, I decided the best solution was to have him kept upstairs on the 2nd or 3rd floor with a dog gate installed at the stairs. The party will be confined to the 1st floor and the garden. Halfway during the party, my son and his 2 friends wanted to go upstairs to see my dog. These 2 friends have come over to my house frequently, and 3 of them have spent unsupervised time around my dog without any incidents for the past 2 years. They're very aware of the rules and boundaries I've set. They can go play fetch and stuff with him, but they are to never play with his tail or face or try to sit on him. Another boy, let's call him B, and his mom apparently heard that my dog was upstairs and wanted to head up too. I said, nope, sorry, my dog doesn't play too well with people he doesn't know, and I can't be around upstairs all the time. B's mom insisted that it'll be fine and that our son loves playing with dogs, etc. I cut her off and said, nah, another time, and directed them both towards the other toys and party stuff going on. Less than 5 minutes later, I hear some barking and some screaming from upstairs. I run up to see B crying and his mom yelling at my dog and me. All sorts of accusations were hurled at me, including having a rabid dog, untrained dog, and she said she was going to ensure my dog was put down. I tried to ask the other kids, my son and his friends, what happened. So it turns out that B and his mother came up on their own, and while my dog was lying in one corner, he decided to go over and start pulling his tail, even though the other kids told him not to. His mother waved him off and allowed B to continue. That resulted in my dog getting up and barking at them, as well as growling. I checked B for any injuries and found none. My CCTV recording showed exactly what my son and his friends had described, and there was no contact between my dog and the boy at any point. B's mom brought him to the doctor anyway for a full checkup, no injuries found, and wanted me to compensate for that along with apologizing for the incident. I said no, and she would be lucky if I didn't pursue anything about trespassing into my house's upper floors. So, am I the jerk? I think OP's not the jerk, and I think they did just about everything they could do short of putting some kind of motion-sensing alarm siren that blares when they cross the threshold into the room. Literally, what more can they do? The parents need to be parents and control their kids and themselves. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not wanting to be a part of a friend's village? So, I'm a part of a group of friends. I'm in my early 30s and a woman. We've all known each other for varying amounts of time. Some people are closer than others. We get all together every month, but obviously some people see each other more often. We normally go for drinks or dinner. One friend, Kelly, 29-year-old female, I'm not really close to. I normally see her as part of the big group. Kelly just had a baby about 7 months ago and seems to be struggling as her husband works long hours. She hasn't come out with all of us, but I've still seen her once in a while. I've started to pull back a bit from my friendship with Kelly, and a few others have as well. Anytime we've gone over there, I live close to her and another friend, she sort of treats us like unpaid labor, but says this is part of being friends. When I'm there, she'll ask one of us to hold the baby or do dishes or run a load of laundry. I have enough of all this to do on my own, minus the baby, so I kind of get a little pissed off going over to someone's house and doing chores every single time. I don't mind helping out, but it's a little crazy. She asked to borrow something of mine yesterday, and I went over to drop it off. While I was there, she asked if I wouldn't mind mopping the kitchen for her. I told her I was in a hurry and she got a bit huffy. She told me that raising a child was hard, and she needed her village to step up and help her. I kind of had enough and told her that I didn't want to be a part of her village. This really set her off, and I walked out the door and haven't spoken to her. Am I the jerk here? Some of my friends are saying that, yeah, I should have just kept my distance instead of saying anything. I think I might be the jerk because I was harsher than I needed to be to someone who was clearly having a rough time. See, this isn't really about helping the kid regardless, this is about helping Kelly. And I get the whole it takes a village mantra, but this also isn't a situation where like they're needing this help because they're so occupied with the kid that either of them are going to suffer. It's just trying to get you to do some extra stuff that you really don't have to do for them. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my daughter she has to go see her mom? My ex and I got divorced when our daughter Emma, 14-year-old female, was a few months old. At first, she had primary custody and I had Emma every weekend. When Emma was 9, she told us that she wants to spend more time with me, and we decided to have her every other week. When she turned 10, she told us that she thinks spending the weekend with a parent was better, but she wants to spend the weekends with her mom and be with me the rest of the time. After that, she told us that this is too tiring for her and she wants to go there every other weekend. A year ago, she decided that she wants to go there once a month. Now she's telling me that she doesn't want to go there at all. I told her that that can't happen and that she has to go see her mom. We got into an argument and I got angry and told her that unless she goes to see her mom, I'm going back to our original custody agreement and she has to live with her mom. She called me a jerk but went to her mom's home, and now she won't answer my call. I understand not being happy with their decision or not agreeing, but I would think most of us would agree that the way OP handled things here is not the way to go. Has OP really taken the time to try to understand why she feels that way? They might be saying, oh, well, it's tiring or it's too much work, but has OP tried to take the time to understand why that is, or why they might be trying to use that as an excuse? Considering the way OP sounds here, I don't know if it even matters to them. This next story is, am I the jerk for asking my friend to not bring his girlfriend on our vacation even though he's providing the accommodation? I'm going on a ski trip in a few weeks with my friends. My friend Dante is providing free accommodation for our entire group. Dante's girlfriend Grace asked to come on the trip too when she heard about it. We didn't know her well when she originally asked, and since Dante wanted her there, everybody said it was fine. However, Grace makes me uncomfortable. I've been friends with Dante since we were both babies, so we're close. Nothing romantic has ever happened between us, but Grace has started asking me some weird and inappropriate questions recently. She's asked me things like if I find him attractive and if I would date him if he gave me the time of day. She also told me I definitely wasn't his type, even though I never asked. I don't want her on the trip, so I asked Dante not to bring her. I told him she made me uncomfortable and he said he would need to think about it. I guess he told her she couldn't come and why, because she's angry at me and thinks I'm doing this to cause issues in their relationship. She thinks that I shouldn't go if I'm so uncomfortable around her instead of forcing him to uninvite her. Our group is divided, so am I the jerk? I think both sides are jerks here. Obviously the girlfriend is incredibly insecure and shouldn't be projecting or harassing OP so much. But for OP's friend Dante to provide free accommodation for the entire group on this vacation, and then for OP to have the gall to ask that person to not bring their partner along, that's kind of ridiculous regardless of how you feel about them personally. If it's that much of an issue, you bow out. You don't ask the person that's paying for the things to get their partner to bow out. Our next story is, Am I the jerk for requiring a cash deposit to come to Thanksgiving dinner and uninviting my sister and her husband because they refuse to pay it? I'm going to be vague because I don't want this to turn into a political debate because it's not one. I'm hosting Thanksgiving this year, and everyone is excited. My house is in a warm location near beaches, so everyone in the family is excited to get out of the cold and dig their toes into sand. My family's large, and as expected, we all fall under different parts of the political spectrum. We might not agree with each other on some issues, but we treat each other with respect and love. That is, except for my sister Carrie and her husband Bob. They strongly believe in their politics and view anyone who doesn't agree with them as being wrong and need to be taught to be correct. Even family members who are in the same political party are wrong if they're not in 100% agreement on every issue. Every get-together turns into a heated debate with them on one side against everyone else, even with the people who vote as they do. Frankly, it's exhausting and life-draining to just be in the same room with them. To head off any political debate this year, I included in the invitation email a ban on political discussions and a request for a monetary deposit of $500. I picked this amount because everyone can afford it, but I wanted it to be a painful loss if they lose it. I stated that this money will be returned at the end of the night if politics are not discussed. Whoever brings up politics will lose their deposit. Everyone agreed and sent me the money, except for Carrie and Bob. They replied that this was stupid and they don't have to pay a deposit to come to a family gathering. I answered, since it's my house, it's my rules. We went back and forth until I got tired of it and uninvited them. I'm here because they have children who will be affected by my decision, and my parents are trying to talk me out of it. They want to see all of their grandchildren, and they think it's cruel to prevent Carrie's from coming. They even offered to cover Carrie's deposit, but I firmly told them no. Am I the jerk for requiring a deposit to come to Thanksgiving? Everybody knows that Thanksgiving dinner is the place where politics, family issues, family grievances are all going to be aired out. I think $500 might be a little too much, but I kind of love this method. Like, bring $100 with you and you give it to me, and I'll give it back to you, no questions asked at the end of the night if you don't bring up politics. I love it. I think OP's not the jerk. Our next story is, am I the jerk for going to the gym first thing in the morning without checking in on my sister-in-law first? My brother and sister-in-law moved into my parents' house where I, female 23, live a few weeks ago with their 2-year-old while their house is being renovated. I watch my nephews sometimes, but I don't know much about kids or taking care of them. I usually go to the gym very early on weekend mornings when it isn't crowded. Yesterday morning, I got up and went to the gym. As usual, no one was up yet. At the gym, I leave my phone in the locker so I don't get distracted. I did my workout and went in the sauna for a while. When I got my phone out of the locker, I had a bunch of calls and texts from sister-in-law demanding to know where I was, saying she needed me to watch my nephew while her and her brother went out and did errands. When I came home, she blew up on me for not checking that they needed me before going to the gym. They had errands to run and she missed her nail appointment. I don't think that's fair, but now I'm feeling terrible about it. OP is clearly not the jerk here. They're in no way responsible for that kid, and that is a load of it expecting them to check in before going about their lives just because they're living in that house temporarily. OP isn't some maid live-in housekeeper. That said, our final story of the day is, am I the jerk for calling my wife unreasonable for backing out of spending Christmas with my family after my mother rejected her cookie sample? Context: for every holiday, my mother would ask the women in the family, my sisters, sister-in-law, my wife, my female cousins, to send samples of the desserts they plan to bring to the celebration for testing and to see if these desserts could make it to the food menu. My wife's been complaining about my mother deliberately rejecting every dessert sample she sent. So many times, my mother has told her that she's being honest and keeping the guest's best interest at heart. Yet my wife still thought that my mother is deliberately excluding her since 2 of her dessert samples were rejected before. For this year's Christmas, my mother's doing the same thing, but this time she told every woman who's participating to make a cookie sample and send it to her for testing. My wife took it as a challenge, and to be honest, she worked really hard to make a good sample and sent it to my mother days ago, and the results just came in yesterday. I came home from work and found my wife upset. I asked what's wrong, and she told me that my mother rejected the sample she sent and decided to exclude her baking from the food list/menu for Christmas this year. I didn't know what to say, but she then told me that she was backing out of the invitation to attend Christmas with my family. I was stunned when I heard her make this statement. I tried to talk to her, but she said it was done. I called her unreasonable to decide to bail on the whole family over some cookie sample. That's just freaking crazy and quite unreasonable. We had a full-on argument about it, and she stated that my mother caused this, but I told her that my mother is pretty serious and careful about the food she offers to the guests, since we're going to have relatives coming from all sides of the country. She told me to stop mentioning it. Later, I heard her cry despite telling her that her baking is amazing and people have preferences, that's all. Am I the jerk for insisting that her decision was unreasonable? I think OP is the jerk because I think this is a really weird practice to support, and she was incredibly proud of the thing she did. OP didn't even stick up for her. I think OP's mom is probably a very scary and argumentative person. That's probably why OP didn't even want to go near trying to stand up for them. Stick up for your wife in something that she felt very proud about. The food menu. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.